We'll call the meeting to order.
Welcome to Nixa City Hall. This video is going to provide you with an overview of how the City of Nixa conducts City Council meetings. We encourage everyone to attend and participate in City Council meetings. This is part of how democracy works at the local level, listening to the perspectives of subject matter experts, city residents, and other community members helps our elected leaders make more informed decisions. Before we start the meeting, let's review some of Council's rules of order. These rules help us make sure our meetings are orderly and efficient, while protecting the ability of everyone to have an opportunity to speak. Please be respectful of the person speaking and hold your own comments until it is your turn to speak. Presenters are invited by the council to provide information during the meeting to the council. These are informational presentations only, and nothing will be voted on at the time of the presentation. Presenters are not time limited. There are 2 times when all other visitors will be able to speak to council. The first is during the visitor section of the agenda, and the second is during any public hearing regarding an agenda item. During the visitor section, anyone may speak to council about any topic, whereas the public hearings regarding specific agenda items allow you to make comments for council to consider before they make a decision on that topic. Whether you wish to speak during any public hearing or the visitor section, the following rules of order will apply. 1. Only one person should speak at a time. Be respectful of the person speaking and wait to speak until it is your turn. 2. Anyone speaking must do so from the podium and speak into the microphone. 3. You must first state your name and provide your address in writing to the city clerk before beginning your comments. 4. All speakers will be given 5 minutes to make their comments to the council. The mayor or council may have additional questions for speakers after this 5-minute period. 5. All comments should be addressed to the mayor and council. 6. If you have questions about existing city processes, programs, or policies, or if you need assistance from staff on any issue, please contact City Hall during normal business hours and we'll be happy to assist you or answer any questions you may have at that time. The public hearing is designed to provide the public an opportunity to provide testimony and information to the mayor and council regarding the decisions they may be considering. Keep in mind this meeting will be recorded and live streamed with video and audio. Therefore, all comments relevant to this meeting must be spoken into a microphone, otherwise video viewers will not be able to hear you. In the case of a closed session or technical difficulties, some meetings or portions of meetings may not actually be recorded or streamed. The use of cell phones during council meetings is discouraged, so please silence all devices now. Thank you for watching, and thank you for engaging with the City of Nixa. The meeting will begin shortly.
Sean Lucas.
Here.
Justin Orff.
Here.
Jared Giddens.
Here.
Aaron Peterson.
Here.
Darlene Graham. Amy Hookstrat.
Here.
Please join me for the presentation of the colors. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. We have a proclamation this evening. Thank you to our friends from American Legion Post 434 here in Nixa. for the presentation of the colors this evening. We also have a proclamation in their honor this evening. Whereas the American Legion was chartered and incorporated by Congress in 1919 as a patriotic veterans organization devoted to mutual helpfulness, and whereas the American Legion has more than 12,000 posts in communities throughout the United States with nearly 2 million members, making it the nation's largest wartime veterans service organization, and whereas Nixa's American Legion Post 434 was chartered in 1949, and whereas American Legion Post 434 was named the American Legion District 17 Post of the Year in 2013 and 2014, and whereas the American Legion Post 434 currently has 122 members, with the oldest being 93 and the youngest being 39, 117 of those members are over the age of 50, and one member has been awarded the Purple Heart. And whereas the American Legion's success depends entirely on active membership, participation, and volunteerism, the organization belongs to the people it serves and the community in which it thrives. And whereas the members of the American Legion Posts are dedicated to upholding the ideals of freedom and democracy while working to make a difference in the lives of fellow Americans, and whereas the City of Nixa honors American Legion Post 434 for its service and dedication to the community and veterans community at large, now therefore I, Brian Steele, Mayor for the City of Nixa, do hereby proclaim August 15th, 2022 as American Legion Post 434 Day in the City of Nixa. We'll move on to our presentation. We have Nick from the American Legion is going to give a presentation on Post 434 and what they're doing in Nixa.
I don't know if you want, or how that's going to work. You want me to speak to you?
You have to speak to us. That's
Okay,
the rules.
My name is Nicholas Gertis. I live at 384 North Niangua Drive here in Nixa. I'm the post commander for American Legion Memorial Post 434. As you see, pretty much, we've been around since 1949 here in Nixa. Most people don't know that our Legion post was actually above Main Corner Mercantile, there on the corner of 14 and Main Street. I had never visited there until about May for graduation parties. Now we are at 591 North McCroskey Street, across from Rotary Park. Been there since 1952, 3 time frame. Yeah. So we've been there for quite a while. A few upgrades over the years, renovations, and now we're starting to get a really nice building. Just to let you guys know, and guys and girls, we can't succeed and we can't thrive in the community and get new members without the help of the city. So we're always going to beg and plead to always get help from you. If I have to get down on my knees, I will. Because from our numbers, 122 members, 117 of them are over the age of 50. Statistically, within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll be down to just a few members. It's sad to say, but it's true. Luckily, I'm not the youngest one there, but there is someone who's rumored to be part of the Civil War, served in the Civil War there, just a running joke. But what we just want to know, you guys or everyone to know, we need help. So if you can help us at any point, advertising, try to get new membership. We want to be more active in the community. Most of you probably didn't know that the American Legion actually ran the American Legion Jubilee Festival in Nixa many, many years ago, back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. It's a bit of history. If you've been to any of the Chris, you're going to be mad at me because I can't think of the name of it. Chamber of Commerce meetings. Nixa was part of the American Legion was part of the rural fire department. We ran that. If you ever go to the fire department, there's a gold fire hydrant out in front that was donated by Phineas Gold, one of the first commanders of our American Legion post. So we have a long-standing history here in the city of Nixa, and we'd like to continue that. Hopefully we can bridge a gap with me and the city council and mayor and kind of rebuild that and get us back to where we used to be. Some of the things we do now in the community, if you've ever gone to Price Cutter, there's a little fenced-in dog pen area out in front for can recycling. That goes to us. That money that we get from recycling those cans, that helps pay for our utilities, to keep our lights on, because at one time our American Legion members had to pay for the utilities to keep the doors open for veterans. On top of that, we help out at least of these. We've always gone over there and helped box up meals to give to individuals. One of our biggest things that we do is military funerals. Our honor guard does at least 100 funerals a year, and since they've been doing it, it's been over 1,200 funerals to honor our veterans. And then on top of that, any money that we do get, we donate back to the community. One of the, we build, or Al does a lot of ramps for veterans so they can get into their houses. And we donate money to Girls and Boys State. We do the Boys State, and our auxiliary donates money to the Girls State. That's all, we pay for all their expenses to get up there. So that's one of the things we try to do, but we want to do more. So we're just asking for your help, and if we ever need it, we really do appreciate it. So that's all I got.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your service and for all that the Legion does here in Nixa. You also have an auxiliary as well, that
Yes,
you don't necessarily have to be a veteran to be
In the auxiliary.
to be in the auxiliary. So anyone
Correct.
who would like to support your organization can definitely could help with the auxiliary as well, right?
So that's all I got. If you have any questions for me.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
I have a question, sorry.
Nope.
If someone wanted to make a donation, how would they go about doing that?
You can contact myself on Facebook, or you can just, you could actually message us on Facebook. We have Facebook, Instagram. I haven't set up Twitter yet, but we at least have Facebook and Instagram. You can just search American Legion Memorial Post 434 on Facebook, and then on Instagram, it's American Legion Post 434. But you're gonna get me. You'll get a message back, so. You can reach out to me. We do take donations, and so if you want to rent our building too, we rent out our building.
Also rent the building. Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
Yes.
We do birthday parties, weddings, bar mitzvahs, everything. So yeah, that's another thing. We rent out the video or the Legion Hall. We have free Wi-Fi, everything in there. So like full kitchen. It's a very nice granite donated by Unique Tile here in Nixa. A lot of local businesses in Nixa donated. It's like $40,000 or $50,000 worth of stuff to renovate our building. So there's still more that we want to do. We put a new parking lot in because it used to be gravel. So we spent about $20,000 to put in asphalt. Replaced our sidewalk because it was not handicap accessible. There's a good 2-inch gap between the concrete and to get in the door. So we tore that out, put in brand new concrete to make it level. Put a concrete pad on the back to make another exit out the back in case of an emergency and stuff like that. So we want to put a patio out there. That's going to cost money. We got to reseal the parking lot, the old parking lot. That takes money. So we got to fundraise, and we need help. So we want to make it, and then after that, trying to make it handicap accessible with push buttons to open up doors. So that takes money too. So applying for grants, every grant I seem to get turned down on. I don't know why, but I keep getting turned down on grants trying to get these things. So. Anything we can do to help out and get help, we would really appreciate it.
Well, let us know anything that the city can do for you. We're all always happy to support you, and anything that we can do as a city, we're happy to do that as well.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for your
very
time.
much.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
All right, we will move on to our visitor section. Becca.
Ron Sanders.
Good evening. I'm Ron Sanders. Are we still doing the address, or is it just good enough on the card now? Good enough on the card?
It's like if you say what town you're from, just to make sure.
Oh, I'm
that-
from Nixa.
If you say you're from Nixa, then we know the person's from Nixa, right?
Yeah, definitely. If you didn't know that, you haven't been paying attention just yet. I'm really glad that we did have this happen, and I think that everybody does need to be aware that we do have an American Legion post. There are hundreds of people here that don't know that it's here, and it needs all the support that we can give. They should be at the front of every parade. They should be at the front of our hearts. They should be involved in everything that we can get them involved in. And I hope that we start seeing a lot more. But that's not what I came here to talk about. I've been going to the Home Charter Commission meetings, and going through that process it seems a little bit tedious. It's definitely necessary. It is a document that has a lot of accountability in it. And, whenever you have unbridled power, you have unbridled, people who may or may not abuse their authority and abuse their power. And that document puts a limit, a severe limit in some cases, on the power that you have. And I would encourage everybody sitting here to come to one of the meetings, watch the discussions. I'd encourage everybody that's watching from home to find out when the next meeting is and maybe come and sit through it, or at least through the public comment section. There's a lot of people out there that don't know that we have a home charter, don't know what the purpose of the home charter is, but ultimately it's the rules that the city council lives by. It's the rules that created our city government, and it also are the rules that hold everybody accountable and keep everybody from, doing wrong things. Making mistakes is one thing, but doing things that you're not supposed to do is something completely else. And I'm very glad that we are reviewing that document, because we get to go through that, and we get to take a look at some things like the judge of qualifications for everybody. We get to take a look at, there's not very much in there about accounting as far as the money goes and everything. That's a really short one. But then we get to the election process and how everybody's voted on and everything. And just having six elected city council members may change, or somebody may want to have at-large city council members. And all of that stuff is being discussed. And that really does change the dynamics of our government. So everybody should be involved, and everybody should be interested in exactly how it's going to change, because it's going to be on the ballot here pretty soon. And whenever it does get on the ballot, it's going to be very hard to help everybody understand the intricacies of some of the things that they're recommending. So ultimately, it is one of the most important things to get involved in, is making sure that you're here, so that whenever ordinances are passed, everybody knows. We have an ordinance coming up tonight, and I'm going to speak on it, about an Airbnb. I didn't know that we had to come to the city council to ask for permission to have an Airbnb and all the restrictions that are on it. I understand having a business license. I understand, some of the restrictions that may be for a business like a hotel and everything. But to come here and actually have to pass an ordinance, how did that get through? Was anybody even here listening to the ordinance being spoken about whenever it was passed and everything? And I'm talking about the citizens, and I'm talking about us being held accountable. You can't just come and vote, once or twice or three times a year. You have to come here. You have to listen to everything that's going on. You have to read these ordinances, because it's unfair to the city council members to have to pass stuff or not pass stuff without ever hearing from any citizens on whether it's a good idea or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
Jeannie Coburn, you want to talk about the police and parks. Are you wanting to talk during an agenda item? I'll speak now. Okay.
My name is Jeannie Coburn. I live at 1371 West Stonehouse Road. You probably don't know me. I'm not that famous, but I wanted to just touch base with you and let you know that, again, I appreciate all of your efforts. I know that you're really trying to make this town a better place. I want to say that because we have an election process, and I support that election process, that is what we need to be relying on for our representation. And because we have representation, that allows us to have communication with city council members. I know that outside of the meetings here, you spend plenty of time doing a lot of city business that we don't know about and that we don't see. It's all behind the scenes. And I know that you talk to constituents all the time. I appreciate that. We don't have to come here all the time to get answers. We can talk to you directly, and that's very much appreciated. That's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coburn.
I do have other members of the audience that have signed up, but all of them seem to be agenda items. So if you want, I can call your names individually, and if you want to speak on an agenda item, you can. So I've got Elizabeth Buskirk. Are you wanting to speak on an agenda item? You have taxes down.
Right, I do. Actually, can I do both?
Sure, yeah.
My name is Elizabeth Buskirk, and I live at 1227 Verna. I just also wanted to say thank you for taking into consideration the diverse ideas that we in Nixa have. As it has grown, some 25% over the past 20 years, I'm sure, since I've only been here since 2014, that people have seen changes that they don't like, as well as the changes that they do like. And I want to encourage us all to remember that we aren't the only people living in Nixa. We aren't it. It's not even this whole room, that we are just individuals who are trying to build a community together. And that means that all of us have to listen to what everybody has to say and take into consideration the possibility that maybe others agree and disagree with what we think. And that sometimes it's best just to come together and find a way to solve that. One of the ways we do that in democracy is through the election system. So I just want to say that if we start to question how we elect people, when we elect them, whether or not we can recall them, or whether or not we can reinforce the fact that they've been elected, all of those things chip away at the very important communication of voting. And every time that we allow people to question a decision that the people have made, that chips away at the core of what voting does in our democracy, and obviously here in Nixa. So thanks to all of you in the council for listening to what people have said to you, especially through the vote. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Janet Jenkins, you have Airbnb. Are you wanting to speak on an agenda item? So during the agenda, okay. Anna Evans, we've already talked. And then Tamara Yancey, are you wanting to just speak on the tax on the, okay, then I have no more visitors.
All right, thank you very much. Move on to wrong page. We already had our presentation, so we'll skip to the first reading of ordinances.
First reading Council Bill number 2022-081, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa granting special use permit 22-003 to authorize the short-term residential rental use for a single-family zone property located at 876 East Scott Wayne Drive.
Mayor, council, good evening. The owner for a single-family residential dwelling unit located at 876 East Scott Wayne has submitted a special use permit in order to operate a short-term residential rental. The City of Nixa defines a short-term residential rental as renting of an entire dwelling or any portion thereof for a period of not more than 30 consecutive days to overnight guests, where the owner is engaged in a contract for the rental of the specific dwelling or any portion thereof. So according to section 117-102, which is the code section involving short-term residential rentals, a short-term residential rental may only be issued to permanent residents for the principal residential structure on the subject property. We define a permanent resident as a property owner or leasee who maintains a dwelling as a primary resident as documented by at least 2 of the 5 following documents: a motor vehicle registration, a driver's license, a voter registration, tax return, or utility bill. The applicant in this case has provided a motor vehicle registration along with a voter identification card with her name and 876 East Scott Wayne Drive on it. Other requirements are that short-term rentals can't be within 150 feet of other approved short-term residential rentals. There is no approved short-term residential rentals in this neighborhood. At the August Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, a public hearing was held for this agenda item. 3 members of the neighborhood approached the commission to voice their concerns about the safety and welfare of the neighborhood if this were to be approved. In addition to that, the Planning and Zoning Commissioners also would like to revisit the ordinance to possibly change some of the language in it. With all things considered, the commission voted unanimously to recommend approval for this special use permit to City Council, and staff also recommends approval. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Any questions? Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
We will open up the public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this item. No.
Good evening, I'm Janet Jenkins, and I am 878 East Scott Wayne Drive, neighbor to the prospective Airbnb. My concern with the reading of the zoning and requirements are that those have not been met at the present time, and that the permission has been granted for them to continue this Airbnb. With that said, I don't think the ordinance here covers enough of what is being faced by the community. And in the coding now of the 117-102, it states that it is subject to the use of the people that would not cause any harm or nuisance, for example, okay? So I'd like to speak to that at the present time. We have, number one, I've had personal nuisance issues. I have called the police. After the last zoning meeting, which was suggested that that's what my alternative was to do, we've had people walking across the back of my yard. The house does not have a fence, that's the Airbnb, has rented to dogs, allowed pets, and have ran through the yard unleashed, ran through my house, because my back door was open as I was coming and going. And not just mine, but the neighbors behind me. And this has happened twice now, as well as having people come into our doors at 8:30, 10:30 at night, thinking they're at the Airbnb. So we've got a small street off of Rockingham, which is a very busy street, and we have single-side parking, and it's advertised that the Airbnb would be off-road, and it's not, and people are people. Sometimes they park in the middle of the whole driveway, and that makes the other people that are renting their park to the side, which causes a hazard for police. It also slows down the traffic from the the FedEx and Prime and et cetera. And we've got school coming up soon. We've got children that will be walking from our location because school buses don't run that far. But we do have school buses in the area on Weldon. So we've got additional traffic wearing down the roads and causing potential danger. I would like to stress not only these concerns, but the fact that the regulations stipulated in that code have not been met. The owner is subject to the regulations of a business license prior to rental, not happened. City of Nixa rental inspection, not happened. And no rental without a business license confirmed by the council. And therefore, I really am concerned mainly with the single-family zoning. Taney County and Stone County have since changed their ruling and will not rent or allow vacation rentals in single-family dwellings. I don't know, I didn't check into the reasons why. I think I can guess from the experiences I've been having. Yearly rental opposed to a vacation rental, at least you've got the same people next door, you've got the same rhythm. We've got people coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning. We've got people coming in the middle of the afternoon. We've got people coming in the evening, like I said, carrying their pillows, ringing the wrong doorbells. So this, I don't think, contributes any to the city of Nixa, who has done such a good job in the good school districts that we have. That's a great blessing. And also in the low crime rate. Thank you all for all of your guidance. But as a citizen, let's be proactive to maintaining our good standing and not reactive after the fact when something goes amiss. And then we have to think, you know, this could have been avoided if it wasn't our residential single family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll leave open the public hearing. If anyone else would like to speak to this item?
All right. I don't know if I can get questions answered right away or not. A lot of concerns that the previous speaker had are very valid. A lot of it should be covered in the zoning, correct? If somebody had a house that was zoned commercial, then maybe that would change how it's viewed as far as an Airbnb goes, or is it a blanket ordinance where whether it's a commercial property or a residential property, the rules pretty much apply overall? And
We don't allow residential in commercial districts currently. That's just not something we allow unless it's a PUD like we had at the last meeting. This is just for R1, R3, and R4, correct? Right. So the like apartment buildings, duplexes, and single-family homes.
Right, but if it flipped, if people wanted to rezone their property commercial for the purpose of an Airbnb vacation home, would that be allowed? What would it take for somebody to do that?
I don't think I assume, Scott, we wouldn't allow people, we don't allow people to live in a commercial district, so.
Okay, so the commercial
If it was
property.
a hotel, so if you zoned it as a hotel, then that would be something different, but.
Okay, so and that's going to keep the Airbnbs out pretty much of the city as far as housing, as far as houses go, developments like that. My point is that Airbnbs, although there may be some problems with them, overall, it's a very well-structured and very good business model, where if there are bad actors, they're weeded out of the system, and usually Airbnb will cancel their membership and not let them rent any future properties and everything. We already have a very restricted ability to house friends and neighbors or friends and family members that may come in from outside. So we're down here 30 minutes from Springfield, and they're in a hotel, up on the other side of Springfield, and 20, 30-minute drive to come to the house every day. Whereas if it was available and if it was structured properly, if there was an actual business model that relied on, them being good actors, then we wouldn't have the problems that, that she has, alluded to, because it would behoove them to follow a good business model to make it work. Whereas, 30 days at a time, and somebody like moving out of their house and letting people come in, that's not really a solid business model where people will get to develop a process, develop an actual business process to make it work and provide a good service to the community, where it doesn't harm the community and it doesn't really harm the neighbors. Or there's a certain area of the city where it may be functional. And there are some properties that have houses built on them that are commercial lots. And there's, other than HOAs, HOAs may prevent it, but outside of the HOAs, it would be a process for them to become a commercial building, set up their business model, and have a permanent house, that can be rented out like a hotel. That would give us many more options whenever it comes to businesses, whenever it comes to housing, 2 or 3 families that are coming in from Pittsburgh and from Orlando and from Arizona. I want to have family over for Christmas or something like that. So, what are my options? There are thriving business models where it doesn't harm the community, and I think that maybe it would be worth looking into to find that business model and maybe codify it in the laws, in the zoning structure, so that people can create that business model that will serve the community well and minimize any of the problems that it might have with neighbors and with the community as a whole. So it'd be worth taking everything that we're experiencing from this particular situation and maybe re-looking at the whole process, re-looking at the ordinance, re-looking at the zones, the different standards for the zones, and see what it would take to actually make an Airbnb model business work here in Nixa. Because I would imagine that a lot of people would end up using it quite frequently. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanders. And we've opened the public hearing.
My name is Charlene Whitty, and I'm the homeowner of 876 East Scott Wayne Drive. I gave you guys all a timeline to kind of just follow along with me too as I read through them. But I also brought a police department, I don't know if you need this, but just showing that I don't have any citations or any police reports on my property. So I moved into the Nixa area in October of 2021 after the certificate of occupancy was issued for my newly built home. Prior to Nixa, I lived in the Ozarks for more than 20 years. I'm going to brief on the timeline of the leasing of my residence. I only lease my 3rd bedroom. I don't lease my entire dwelling. So, on April 2nd, 2022, I leased my 3rd bedroom for the first time through a third party leasing provider, Airbnb. I was unaware I needed to check with my city or state on obtaining any sort of license. For this, I apologize. It was brought to my attention on June 10th by a neighboring property owner that a license was required through the city. This was a Friday. On the following Monday, June 13th, I called the city Nixa Hall and spoke with someone in the planning and zoning department That person stated a letter would be going out to me with instructions on how to obtain a short-term business license. On June 16th, I received a letter from the city with the guidelines and ordinances. Sometime between June 20th and the 24th, a friend of mine picked up the business license application on my behalf from City Hall, as they were only available in person. On June 29th, I filed for my short-term business license, paid the monetary dues, and provided 2 documents as proof of ownership for my residency. It was at this time that I asked the city whether I was capable of continuing operating or if I needed to cease further operation. I was given verbal permission by the city to continue leasing my bedroom. Sometime in July, I received a notice of the 3 August public hearings. At the July meeting, it was already full, so I had to stand before the committee on August 1st. So over 30 days had passed, and I was still able to continue, just under the assumption that I was not doing anything wrong. I have not violated any CCNR provisions. I'm a reputable taxpayer. I maintain my property. I have no prior convictions or citations, and I have completed the application for short-term business license and have cooperated with the city during this entire process. I ask that the council takes into consideration my swift actions on obtaining my license and further sees that I have been compliant. This should conclude everything I feel is necessary to bring to the board's attention. I feel like I should be given a fair opportunity to obtain my license as I followed both my city and HOA ordinances. I've done everything I've been asked of, and if the future of this ordinance needs changed, I ask that it does not hinder me today.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we'll leave open the public hearing. And close the public hearing. Scott? I got more questions. Can you explain the process in the ordinance if a neighbor did have, once the permit was given, the process for filing complaints, if the things that the lady earlier talked about, being disruptive or, dogs running through, what's the process as that goes with this ordinance as far as the short-term rentals?
As far as the ordinances says, it's up to city council's discretion as to whether or not to revoke the business license or the special use permit in order to operate. So if we did receive a complaint about a short-term rental, we would recommend that they reach out to you, or we can inform you. We have not received any complaints before from a approved short-term rental, so that is something that the ordinance isn't clear on, so we can come up with a better way.
Okay. So maybe, we should have them file complaints through the regular customer service, the nuisance.
Correct. That's how this one got on our radar, is that a complaint came in through our code compliance department.
Yeah, let's try to codify that a little bit better and get that down. Okay. What's that? Do we have, is there any language in the ordinance regarding the time between the time you file? She said she was told that she needed to file. She filed the correct paperwork. She was told by someone at City Hall that she needed to, that she could go ahead and operate her business until such time as we were able to have the correct meetings to give her the permit. Is that the way it's spelled out in the ordinance? Is that just internal policy that we followed?
Correct. There is no timeline mentioned in the ordinance. It is a staff decision. Since we enacted this after a lot of short-term rentals were already operating within the city limits, we chose the position of working with the applicants or the business owners rather than shutting them down and potentially hurting their ratings or anything like that. So, and the other issue is that I believe Springfield and Nixa are the only ones in the Springfield metro area that have a short-term rental ordinance. So with us not actively pushing it out there all the time, it's not always reaching the potential operators. So I would say a majority of our applicants for short-term rentals are currently or were operating before they made the application. But the ordinance doesn't currently state any time frame on that. has to win.
Well, it seems like a reasonable thing if they're already operating and we're moving along with the process, that everything should work out fine. Any other questions for Scott? Oh, thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All right. Thank you all for speaking. We're going to move on to the next item. We'll bring this up at the next meeting.
First reading Council Bill number 2022-082, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending Chapter 2, Article 1 of the Nixa City Code by readopting Section 2-4 as authorized by Section 105.485 RSMO for the purpose of establishing provisions related to the conflicts of interest and financial disclosure.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm going to give Drew a second to pull up a PowerPoint that I prepared on this. But I will be presenting Council Bill 2022-082, which is an ordinance, or is a bill presented for council to adopt or readopt the city's personal financial disclosure regulations. So we're going to get into the background of why this bill is coming forward. So we're talking about Chapter 105 in the Revised Statutes of Missouri. This chapter contains provisions which require certain elected and appointed public officials to file annual financial disclosure statements. This is a transparency requirement. These documents contain a number of required disclosures that members of the General Assembly, members of City Council have to disclose so the public is aware of certain transactions that occur with their elected officials. For cities, interestingly, Section 105-485 authorizes cities to adopt their own financial disclosure regulations. There's a floor or a minimum disclosure requirement in those, but practically speaking, what this amounts to is if a city adopts its own financial disclosure regulations, then those folks required to file under those regulations file what's called the short form disclosure statement versus the long form, which is the statutory form. There is a limitation on this authority, though. If cities elect to adopt their own regulations, then these regulations can only be effective for a 2-year period, which is why we're here this evening. In 2020, the council adopted and the mayor approved the current financial disclosure regulations. That was done by Ordinance 2137, and those requirements are codified in Section 2-4. So we're coming up on that 2-year requirement. So that brings us to the bill before council this evening, Council Bill 2022-082. In substance, the bill that's presented for council's consideration is the same as the one that was presented 2 years ago. The only change is one of procedure. We are including a reference to Section 1-9 in the bill, in the code section. Section 1-9 is the city's general penalty ordinance. It's a catch-all. If there's not a specific penalty provision in a code section, you default to 1-9. And this brings up an interesting question, and one that I feel the council needs to make an informed decision on, which is whether the council should adopt this bill or not in the first place. So what we're talking about here is an enforcement component. So if the council chooses to adopt a financial disclosure ordinance, then the provisions of the ordinance are enforced like any other ordinance, meaning the municipal court process. So like a ticket is filed, there's municipal court prosecution, and there's likely fines at the end of that process if there's a conviction. So this raises some potentially thorny issues for the council, because if the allegation is that a member of council has failed to fill out a financial disclosure ordinance in compliance with our city code, I will not be able to prosecute that as city attorney because it would be a conflict of interest with going against one of the people that I have a duty to provide legal advice to. So there would likely have to be the appointment of a special prosecutor to do something like that, which could incur costs on the city, and the process for appointing such a person could be complicated. And ultimately, the actual penalties for violating an ordinance just amount to monetary fines. It wouldn't actually cure the defect if there was a defect. So that's if we adopt the ordinance. If an ordinance is not adopted, then the council, then the city would revert to the state law requirements, because the authority to adopt an ordinance is an exemption to the statutory requirements. And if that occurs, if the council does not adopt the financial disclosure ordinance, then the provisions of state law will apply, which is enforced by a statutory command by the Missouri Ethics Commission. So a separate apolitical organ of the state government. This enforcement, if there was a violation, would require no prompting or initiation from anyone affiliated with the city. It would be a complaint process where a complaint's referred to the MEC and then they would investigate. And also, the potential remedies for a violation of the statutory scheme are a little different than those of the ordinance. So the statute refers to the potential removal from office for a violation without a cure. Also for candidates, because this would apply to council candidates, the removal of candidates from a ballot for election if they also fail to cure a defect in their financial disclosure statements. There's also stiffer monetary penalties. So I have a slide up here to kind of demonstrate the differences here. So right now the city operates under the short form, and those items listed under the short form column are what people who have to file this are required to disclose. That's under the ordinance, if the ordinance were to be readopted. If the ordinance is not adopted and the city instead reverts to the statutory scheme, what's listed under the long form column is what individuals required to file these would have to provide. And in blue are the parts that, in the long form, that are already covered in the short form. So you can see that under the state scheme, you have to disclose a little bit more information. But if that is the direction that council decides to go, whether or not there's been a violation of this isn't enforced by the city. So what are the options? So because we have this 2-year clock, this bill is being presented so that council can make whatever decision it decides to make on this. So staff has presented a bill that is in substantial compliance with what we had adopted 2 years ago, so that if council decides to elect to operate under the ordinance scheme, that you can make that decision. The requirement under state law is that these have to be filed or adopted and filed with the MEC before September 15th. And then the other, so that's the option if we decide to adopt the ordinance. That's teed up for council to make that decision at the next meeting, or even at the meeting after that. It's before September 15th as well. The other option is to elect to forego the adoption of the ordinance and just operate under the statutory regulatory scheme. That would be enforced by the MEC, but there is a more complicated disclosure requirement for members of council, people running for council, the city administrator, city attorney, and the purchasing agent. Additionally, those aren't the only two options. It's possible that there's an option where council could adopt the ordinance and kind of punt the question of whether or not to operate under the statutory scheme by later repealing the code section. Once it's repealed for the next election cycle or the next reporting cycle, the city would default to the statutory scheme. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, provide any follow-up information that council might direct, whatever the decision is. But the intent here is to make sure that council's making an informed decision on this, is aware of all the aspects of it, and can make whatever decision we need to make on it.
Any questions? Doesn't necessarily change any of the rules, it just changes the forms and then who enforces those rules.
Yes, it would change what form people are required to fill out, which does require more information. And it changes who would enforce those. It would also change those penalties slightly, well, actually quite fundamentally. So instead of a monetary fine for violating an ordinance, you could see potentially being removed from office or not being allowed to run for office if you don't file the required financial disclosure. And those penalties come with a cure period. So the MEC will have to notify people who haven't filed these disclosure forms of the fact that they've not disclosed information. Then the offending party has an opportunity to cure that by disclosing, and then the MEC won't take that enforcement action.
Questions? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Woodman. And we will open up the public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this item.
Got a couple quick questions. If the city adopts the ordinance, oh, my name's Ron Sanders, I live here in Nixa. If the city adopts the ordinance, are the financial disclosures still submitted to the MEC, or are they just held locally?
Mr. Woodman, I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're filed with the city clerk and with the Missouri Ethics Commission.
Okay. And I guess the biggest question at this point would be, do you want to fill out the short form and have to deal with all the legal mess here locally, or do you want to fill out the long forms and, you know, be at the mercy of the state? And I'll tell you, it's a hard decision, and, you know, because even the candidates are going to have to definitely live with the decision. But we've had it for 2 years. Was it renewed
We've had
like
it
2
for,
years
yeah.
before that?
Had it for as long as.
For
any
as
of us-
long as-
As long as any of us have been here, yeah.
So it's a Nixa tradition. Okay, cool.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. And we'll leave open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
I don't mind the longer form if it puts that on the MEC and not us.
Yeah, I think it's safer for the city long-term, more work for us, but
Yeah.
safer for the city. Long form's not that long.
No,
Long form, it's not
I
that bad.
mean, I filled out longer for a golf tournament, so
Yes, I think so.
we'll be okay.
So you want
Those
us,
documents are attached to the memo, so just in full disclosure, so there could be a more thorough comparison. But there is quite a bit more to disclose. That's the one downside. So it does remove the enforcement issue, but it's a little bit more complicated to fill out. Requires a little bit more tracking.
it's only required each
There's
each
a-
election cycle,
Yeah,
right?
there's
So
a,
it's-
well, I think it's, I believe. and
Or
I
we
can
have to fill out
follow
every
up
year,
on
don't
that.
we?
Yeah, there's an annual, and then when you file for office.
Okay. So I think we'll just go ahead and take this to the next meeting, go through the process. If you vote no on it, then we will ask Mr. Woodman to bring an ordinance to the next meeting to repeal
Yeah.
the section.
So if the council does elect to forego the adoption of the ordinance, just for a housekeeping measure, we would need to come back with a bill to repeal these sections from the code, just so there's no confusion on people who may decide to run for office and look at our regulations and see a different disclosure process.
But we don't have to have that done by September 15th.
No, the only thing that has to be done by September 15th is adopting the ordinance again. That's if we want to be governed by the ordinance.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, we'll move on to the next one.
First reading, Council Bill number 2022-083, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa establishing and levying taxes on real property in the city for the 2022 tax year. This one is me. This is our annual ordinance to be able to establish and set the tax levy for the city on real property. To be able to do that, we have to post a public hearing about the levy, and we have to pass an ordinance establishing and authorizing the levy. The deadline for the final certification for this to the Christian County Clerk is August 31st. We have published about our public hearing that went out on August 10th through the Christian County Headliner. Provided to you was the 2022 assessed evaluation and the notice that was sent to the Headliner. You'll notice that the rate did not increase from last year. It is still 0.2990. If you have any questions, I will try my best to answer them.
Any questions? Thank you, Becca. We'll open up the public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this item. And close the public hearing. Any further discussion? I'm glad we don't have to have a special meeting anymore. We used to have to always have a special meeting for this, like on a Thursday to get it passed before the deadline.
No special meeting.
No special meetings. I
Second
like it.
read next Monday.
I love it. All right, move on to the next one whenever you're ready.
First reading, Council Bill number 2022-084, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending the 2022 annual budget to appropriate funds for the hotel market and financial feasibility study.
All right. Mayor, Council, tonight before you is the request for a budget amendment to complete a hotel market and financial feasibility study, or for short, I'm just going to call it a hospitality study. Typically, these hospitality studies need to be done to be able to market our community better to potential hotel developers. We do occasionally have those conversations, and I can tell you on multiple occasions we've been asked if we have one of these studies in place. It is something that most communities would have to be able to draw that type of development. I was looking at doing one of these, or at least asking council to put it in next year's budget. I had planned on trying to do it as quickly as possible. But in the meantime, Show Me Christian County had actually been working on the possibility of doing a countywide feasibility hospitality study. So during that conversations with them, the idea came up of potentially splitting the cost of a study for the entire county. They did go out and receive bids for that and got a bid come back at $39,000 to do that study for the whole county. So my recommendation would be to partner with Show Me Christian County, the Christian County governmental entity, as well as the city of Ozark, and split that cost. If we do that, that will save the city a significant amount of money to complete this hospitality study. Just a little bit of background, we were able to pick 2 potential locations within our community that we think could be viable locations for a potential hotel site for a developer. So we did do that, and we did turn those in and provided those to Show Me Christian County. They will then provide those, if this budget amendment is approved and we do enter into this agreement, they will provide those to the company to actually evaluate those specific sites or those areas that we chose. Obviously, one is to the south and one is to the north on 160, being our most viable location for traffic through the city, especially between Springfield and Branson. I did list in my memo some of the things that that study would provide as far as the different tasks there. I listed 6 of those that they've agreed to do as part of that study, from all the way from the kickoff to evaluating the economic and demographic and tourism analysis for those areas, as well as corridor profiles, hotel market analysis, and then ultimately recommendations. They will actually look at the rooms themselves and do some financial projections as far as, what a room might need to cost to be financially stable for that developer, things of that nature. Again, tonight, I'm just presenting this as we need to do a budget amendment in the amount of $13,000 to cover our portion of the study. I'd like to give Show Me Christian County the opportunity to come up and talk a little bit about the study as well. Kristen Hazeltine.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Like Mr. Lyle said, my name is Kristen Hazeltine. I'm the president and CEO of Show Me Christian County. My apologies, first of all, that this is my first meeting that I've attended. We have been hard at work. I'm about 3 months in, so like Jimmy mentioned, sorry, Mr. Lyles, like he mentioned, we have been working with the county, City of Ozark, City of Nixa on this feasibility study, and it has been everybody has been approached by developers, and we are hearing from business owners that are currently here. We are hearing from potential opportunities that are wanting to relocate here. And one of their big hiccups, and everybody asks, is where do people stay? So this feasibility study is the first step that we must take in order to prove to them that we have the traffic, that we have the tourism numbers, that between Branson and Springfield, that this is a necessity. So like Mr. Lyle says, we have both 2 locations here in Nixa that we are going to look at, and then 2 also in Ozark. So we are presenting this week for the county commissioners, and then in the next couple of weeks we'll be with the City of Ozark presenting as well. So I believe that's all I have. Is there any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you very much.
And we will open a public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this item. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Nope. Like saving money.
Mayor, Council, just one more comment. I don't think I
sure.
mentioned. We will be bringing back an IGA as well at the next meeting to enter into that agreement along with this budget amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Lyles.
First reading Council Bill number 2022-085, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa, amending Chapter 12, Article 4 of the Nixa City Code by adding thereto a new section, Section 12-85, to allow for citywide garage sales.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, as Becca said, we have an ordinance that will amend Nixa's code to add a new section to allow for citywide garage sales. Each year, as you all know, the city has a citywide garage sale that's held over Mother's Day weekend. It generates a lot of people come into our town. We've even had people from out of state show up, which also is a huge generator for economic activity for our local businesses, our restaurants, and our gas stations. Nixa Chamber has approached the city with the idea of having a citywide fall garage sale. This was per request of several of our residents, and I believe even one of our council members. In order to do this, we've reviewed the current code, and it was determined that a code amendment was needed to add a new section to allow for citywide garage sales. Currently, the residents are limited to 2 sales per year, and this would exempt the citywide garage sales from that limit. The Nixa Chamber, if this does go through, plans to promote the event like they do in the spring. They will provide online digital maps, marketing materials, and they'll also do press releases. The Nixa Chamber also has checked with the Nixa Police Department to see if there would be any problems with this, and they were assured that there was no problem at all. Staff recommends approval of the ordinance. Any questions?
So this is in addition to the 2 limit that people already have, so you can.
Yes,
you
you'd
could have
actually have
Mother's
4.
Day, you could have this one, and you could have 2
You could
others
have
that
up
you
to
got a
4.
permit for.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mrs.
Thank you.
We'll open up public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this item. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Nope. All right, move on to the last one here.
First reading Council Bill number 2022-086, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa calling an election to be held on November 8th, 2022, to submit to the qualified voters the question of imposing an additional 1-cent general sales tax to fund public safety and recreation, authorizing the city clerk to do all things necessary and convenient to submit said question to the qualified voters of the city, and providing for enactment of said tax if approved.
Mayor, Council, as we all know, we've been growing at a very rapid rate. And along with that rapid growth comes some opportunities and challenges. As you know, we've been looking at a lot of those over the last several, not just months, but years, to make sure that we're properly planning not just for today, but for the future as well. So I want to, before we get into the sales tax proposal, I would like to give Chief Campbell and Nixa Parks Director Matt Kraus an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that they're seeing and potential solutions to those, and then I'll come back and visit with you after that. So I think we'll start with Chief Campbell.
Mayor, Council, I know that a lot of the information you're going to get from me tonight is probably not the first time you've heard it, because we're in a constant state of evaluation in our department. And the necessity for that comes from the rapid change that we're forced to deal with in this city, with the growth. On an annual basis, we do a staffing study, and our most recent staffing study indicated that we need 11 more officers to meet the demand that we have today alone. And as you can imagine, that's quite a big number to come to you. These 11 officers would help us answer calls for service, but it would also help us answer the requests that we get for crime prevention programs to continue our investigations when we do have crime in our city, and to keep our response times low, which we're very proud of our response times that we have now in here. And I would also like to point out that not only do we do on this during our annual assessment for staffing, we also attempt to do projections. And in the last several years, our projections have been fairly close. And when we look at 2040, which is a 20-year plan, we're projected to have a need of 80 officers. And I think that's probably an eye-opening number for a number of people, because they think, wow, are we really growing that fast? Are we really that big? But the answer is yes. So where do we put all those 11 officers that we need? Well, we're dealing with a facility issue right now. If you look at this picture we have up here, that's the police department the first time it was built. And I would say at that point it was about a 5,000 square foot facility. So a lot has changed over the years as we've grown. You know, so why are we looking at this space issue? Why are we looking at this assessment? Well, we're finding ourselves, you know, at capacity. We're busting at the seams, so to speak. We have a lack of meeting room space, office space, organized storage. Our restrooms and locker rooms are insufficient for the number of staff that are operating out of our department. We're dealing with safety and security concerns, which are every day are becoming more and more to the forefront with some of the things that are happening around the country. We also have to deal with ADA compliance issues, circulation, and efficiency with mechanical systems. Secure parking is now a thing that we think about at the police department. And with our facility here and our city complex, we have a water retention issue that we deal with. If you know, the utility building floods on a fairly regular basis because of water issues. Our building that we're in has been modified many times over the years to try to keep up, but when you do that, you end up with a piecemeal building. I got one end of the building that was built back in that original picture, and I got the other end of the building, which is newer, and we've stitched together the ductwork and the air conditioning and things of that nature. And so you deal with all those things as you try to keep up. We did an analysis to find out what we need and how much space we're actually looking at. And during that time, we decided to work again with Insight Architects and Napoltz Construction. And then from the city staff, we had C.A. Lyles, Assistant City Administrator, Cindy Robbins, myself, and Chad Tennis. So we did a needs assessment. We're looking at what do we need today, what do we need 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. And then, you know, we looked at those things I talked about. When you look at the history of the police department, you can see that we had 5,000 residents in 1995, and that's when we built our police department. And then we expanded in 2007, and we were serving a population size of about 14,000. And then, you know, at 14,000 population, we had 27 officers, and we were taking about 55 calls a day. And then you fast forward all the way to 2022, we're at 25,000 people estimated. We have 43 officers working out of that building, 6 civilian, and we're taking almost double the calls at 112 calls per day. So you can see that the demand for service is there. Some of our issues are office space. This particular photo that you're going to see, I've got a number of photos just so you can get acclimated to our building. This is what's left of our patrol room. We actually had to convert, it was twice as big as this. We had to convert it into office space and conference space to accommodate some of the more flexible things that we needed in our building. This particular picture was a file room. It is now an office for 4 different people that are sharing that space. We were able to repurpose those files into a different area, and we're making do. This is also a shared space. No less than 4 people are working out of this office. As you can see, that becomes pretty cluttered when you have that space being utilized by multiple people. Again, showing that we're trying to squeeze every square inch we have. We just added a desk to an office so that they have a workspace because they didn't have their own personalized workspace. Again, same picture. And you can see that some of our office space is quite cramped. This particular office was actually a closet, and we converted it over to a office for Officer Forgy. So he's working out of this in essentially a closet space. And you can see we have a lot of storage issues. One unfortunate event when we did expand is that there was not any consideration given to storage. So we have a lot of things in wherever you can put them kind of places. Again, this is a mechanical room. It's actually electrical. I would probably be scolded if they found all those things in the mechanical room. But it is, we were out of places to put things. Again, this is this used to be our preparation room for files and storage. It has now become our landing spot for all of our checkout gear. And you can see that, you know, it's just, we're just putting things wherever we can fit them. This is our training room closet. It doubles as, also, we put all of our things for, you know, like chairs and tables away because it's a flexible space, so we're constantly having to redo those spaces so that we can accommodate whatever thing is going on there. We actually have a scheduler for that room because it's utilized so much. Again, efficiency, I touched on this before. You can see that over the years, we just keep adding air conditioners down the line as we grow, and so we got quite a few different age air conditioners, probably from 20 or 30 years old all the way up to brand new as we've grown and grown. This is pretty telling right here. So this area used to be our booking area and holding cell. It has now been converted into evidence processing and evidence storage. The far room that you see there was an interview room. It's now storage for evidence. We had to convert it. We ran out of space. Again, evidence storage used to be an interview room. Repurposing, you're going to see here a theme, repurposing every square inch. Again, here we have another holding cell that we no longer are using for a holding cell. We are using it for secure storage for firearms. And you can see we got one entire side full, and we have a little bit of space on the other side. Here, skipped over that one, sorry. This is our evidence room. They do an incredible job of keeping this thing organized, but you can see that there is not a square inch of shelving space available there. So it's kind of move one box out to allow one box in kind of scenario. It's very organized, but it is at capacity. And because it's at capacity, this is actually in the utility billing basement, which has flooded, unfortunately. And this is our overflow. So you can see that we're beg borrowing and stealing spaces from other departments who are willing to give it to us. Again, evidence storage being an enormous issue. One thing to consider is that retention is not up to us. It can change. So for example, you've probably heard some things about sexual assault kits being tested or DNA being held longer because the propensity for technology to come along and solve a crime. Every time that they change those retention standards, we have to be compliant and conform to that. So we have no control over that. They may come out tomorrow and say that we have to keep something for 50 years or forever, and we have to be able to have long-term storage. Secure parking, again, is something that we never thought about many years ago, but we definitely think about now. And then water retention, which I mentioned. You can see that the way the parking lot is designed, we do put quite a bit of water through this ditch here, and it's caused some issues with configuring how we can utilize this particular piece of ground. Again, this is an example of the ditch that we have to deal with. In short, these are all of the things that I just outlined, as far as our issues, but I come to you tonight with a plan, and that's where IDEA comes in. And so they have done an incredible job of doing a scoping project for us and a conceptual work for a solution to our issues. And there it is. And you're thinking, wow, that's a big building. That building is a 3-story building with the bottom floor being about the size of our existing police department at about 11,000 square feet. We're at 10,000 right now. Our assessment said that we needed 25,000 square feet, so you have a second story, which would get you about where you need to be. And then, because we want to be thoughtful of the next chief of police that comes behind me in the next 20 years, we're looking at a third story that would be white shell or unfinished, so that we have the ability to grow. It would just be framed out, but it would not be finished out. And then we have the opportunity to grow into that as we get to that 80-officer police department in 2040. Just another angle from a different angle. And this would be the back of the building. It's very rectangular, and it just stacks up our facilities. This is an overview. So what you're looking at when you look at this is our existing footprint. That's the genius of Eric's design here from inside, is that we were able to do this with on our existing property, and also taking into consideration those water retention issues. You can see that we have to reconfigure a little bit of the roadway to gain a little bit of space for parking, but we're reconfiguring a lot of what we have in existing. It does require the demolition of our old police department for the parking lot and the demolition of the utilities building, which we already have a plan to move. This is a first floor office plan. These are all conceptual, but this is what you might expect to find inside that building. And you can see that it addresses our evidence storage issues. It addresses our training room and our public our public community room. Also, all the storage places that we need for locker rooms, things of that nature. And then the second floor is more administrative office, training room, and you can see that there's a large mechanical area, server type room with plenty of space to grow into. So what does all that cost? Well, we're at just over $13 million. And I know that that's probably a bigger number than you've probably heard before. But we've, using the market that we're dealing with and the volatility of some of the materials pricing and things of that nature, I feel like it's probably the most accurate number that we've presented to you yet when we look at these scoping projects. It is a 3-story building, again, with 2 levels finished. One level we'll call white box, and then all the FFE, which is everything you need inside the building to make it kind of turnkey situation. Do you have any questions about that?
Any questions? So you mentioned that it would require demolishing the current building and also utilities building. When would that take place, and where would the officers be housed during the construction process?
So we haven't gotten that far into the project, but the first time we talked about this, you're building out in front of the building. So the first step most likely would be moving utilities personnel back into City Hall. So there would be a remodel here first to accommodate them. Then we would do some demolition to that small building. That's part of the footprint for the new building. And then we can continue to work out of our existing building up until the point that they're ready for us to move in. Then they remove that building, finish the parking lot out, and that's the final phase. That's the concept.
Very good. And Mr. Lucas, too, after Matt does his presentation, I'll be back up and I'll talk a little more about the overall timeline of everything.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Good evening. We too are experiencing much of that growth that Chief referenced, and so moving towards meeting the needs of our growing community. How are we going to do that as a Parks Department? Just give you a little bit of an overview of our existing X Center. It's got 1 regulation basketball court, 2 volleyball courts, 6 total basketball goals. Of course, the fitness center, which is just over 11,000 square feet. Group exercise, including the track and group exercise room, classroom meeting spaces, and of course it's the offices for the Parks Department itself. Many of the programs that you're used to seeing in our gymnasium, in the facility, anything from spectacular, of course basketball, volleyball, And so you'll notice this list of our growing programs. Basketball seeing over 1,000 participants a season. We run 2 seasons back to back. Volleyball's over 300. That's just 3rd through 6th graders. Our pickleball program, we started back up in late 2021, and is just growing exponentially, 30 to 40 on average every day, 3 days a week. So it is going great. Fitness center is going, we do classes both in our group exercise room and the gymnasium. Of course, we have some special events and community events such as the indoor garage sale spectacular. Open court time is just as important as any programmed space. It is just as important for the community to have that time to come in and recreate in a gym that doesn't have any programming going on for basketball, volleyball, things like that. It becomes a social area as well as an opportunity for kids to just work on those fundamentals and skills on their own. Parents and things to play with them as well. We have several sports clinics throughout the year. And then we've seen that, and I think I've referred to this number a couple of times in recent, that we've seen a 57% growth over the last 6 years in our youth sports programs. We are literally busting the seams of the community center. It's full. Just to note, the community center opened 20 years ago this year. And so it opened in March of 2002. Our population here in Nixa was just under 13,000 at that time. And so we have nearly doubled in that 20 years. We have maxed out, the building in general is running at an 85 to 90% capacity. Those remaining, 10 to 15% are most likely times that wouldn't be necessarily conducive, 5 a.m. To 7 a.m. Probably not going to get a whole lot of reservation time or programming time other than fitness classes, which we already do. Again, in the middle of the day, we do see some reservations, but a lot of it is family-driven within our building. And so you're not going to get that in the middle of the day, especially during the school year. During the summer, we certainly do, and there's definitely no room right now. Just to kind of note here, we are seeing around 1,500 to 2,000 people a day through our building. Right now during the summer, that will trail off a little bit during our fall and winter months. These are trackable visits, so people we know are coming in. When you add youth sports into the mix, say basketball, volleyball, and things like that, those are what we consider untrackable. We know that parents are going to come watch the kids. We don't necessarily get a head count. They did not check in. They did not necessarily have a transaction with us during that visit. And so our visits are probably just as high on game days. And so the building stays very, very busy. So what's the future hold? How are we going to grow with our community? I too have a solution. It's a very large solution. Working with SAP Design, we're proposing a sports complex, all indoor, looking at 4 regulation basketball courts, indoor turf facility, and an expansion to our fitness center, to a second fitness center. This would kind of be the interior floor plan of that facility. Basketball courts, like I said, for regulation basketball, that could have up to 24 goals. That's a lot of basketball happening. That would be 8 regulation volleyball courts within that facility. Of course, you can add pickleball and that type of thing as well. The turf facility that you're seeing there is indoor turf, right around that 16,000 square foot of indoor turf. And the orange section is the fitness center. That is around 10,000 square feet. In total, this facility is just over 80,000 square feet, so 80,300 square feet. Another view here, you'll notice it's kind of the same building. The white space that you're seeing there around the turf would be a second-story mezzanine, so expansion space. Currently not programmed, so that could be future development space. Staff's already been working on what they could fill that space with, and things like esports and some of those types of things have come to mind as a possible expansion. But this would give us some room to expand that out. In this current model, it would just be a wide open space, and so we could determine what we want to do with that as future growth kind of helps to dictate where the city goes. Or if we want to jump into something like esports and that type of thing, would give that expansion opportunity. Here's a night view. Whoa, let me go back. Let's hit that view. A nice night view. You can see a lot of glass in front. The overall experience just approaching the building would start from the parking lot. This facility would sit on 8 to 10 acres, would have around 300 to 350 parking spaces. Seems like a lot, but on a tournament day, once you get volleyball and basketball involved, running on all of those courts, you would need every inch of that space. The price tag is lofty, $25 million. This is a turnkey facility. They hand the keys over, building complete. We're ready to run a tournament that day. There's not a thing missing in the facility. It is ready to roll right out of the gate. And that's how we wanted to price that facility and work that facility to make sure that we were ready to go for that development. The possibilities are endless. This gives us that expansion space to go. Currently, just to note, we do run basketball. That 1,000-kid mark, or just over 1,000 kid that I mentioned, we are using school facilities as well. We use and utilize 2 school facilities. But those two are, the school system is seeing the same growth that we are. And so we do get a little worried about when their growth meets a number that they no longer have the ability to provide us those spaces. And something that we need to be thinking about as we continue to move forward in our programming. We're seeing a little over, or this year we should see a little over 4,000 kids through our youth sports. That's just sports. That's not taking any of our enrichment programs or any of those types of things into consideration, special events and all of that as well. So you can see some of these are kind of repetitive, but it would give us the opportunity to go from recreational to having that recreational side and a more competitive edge within the facility. And so it could definitely accommodate both expansions of pickleball, the indoor turf with soccer, futsal. It's just endless, the possibilities. And then we'd have the possibility in the space to bring a special event indoors. Things like the Easter egg hunt that if you attended last spring, we had to move indoors due to the rain. It's a very full building, almost something that we won't be able to continue to do at this time. We were quickly approaching, if not already there, on the opportunity that we may have to limit the number of people that can participate in youth sports, in particular sports, just because we don't have the facilities to operate at a growing capacity. What questions might you have for me?
Any questions?
Just again, quick mention that we use SAP Design for this design. They did a great job in designing the facility that could accommodate the needs for our growing community. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, Mayor, Council, that's pretty exciting. I know that those buildings look fantastic. I want to give a special thank you to both Insight Design. Eric is here tonight as well, or he was. There he is, there's Eric. If you have any questions, I know he'd be happy to speak as well. And then Ben, I think, is in the back of the room from SAP Design. They did a fantastic job. And I think it's important just to remind that this is, I know these buildings, as both mentioned, they're built for expansion. That's important because we're looking at at least 20-year plan here. So we've got to make sure that these buildings can meet not just today's needs, but the needs for the next 20 years. So that's what we got to keep in mind, is that planning, forethought, so that future councils and the community in the future have these facilities available for them for the next 20 plus years. So we're pretty excited about them. I hope you are too. I think they look fantastic. And we're excited to potentially bring those to the public. So with all of that comes the question, right? There we go. There it is. How do we pay for all that, right? Because it's expensive. Construction's expensive. But we do have a plan. Obviously tonight, as we we're talking about a potential sales tax issue that we would like council to consider taking before the public. So we are looking at that proposal tonight and how to afford these solutions to the challenges that Chief went over and Matt went over as well. As we dive into that, I want to take just a second, though, to explain a little bit about our current sales tax rate, just to make sure that everyone understands. I think, does that mean we're done? Lights out?
Put the lights on a timer?
No, I think we have an issue with that light.
All right, we'll have to.
Yeah. So the current sales tax.
Budget amendment.
Yeah, right. Budget amendment. Can we have a budget amendment for lights?
Can't keep the lights on now.
That's right. We need to talk to Doug. Maybe we didn't pay our bill. So sales tax, right? I want to talk a little bit about what we currently are looking at with sales tax currently in the city. Right now, we're at 7.475%. I think the important thing to understand here is that the city of Nixa only collects collects 1.5% of that total. That's 0.5%, or goes to transportation. That's how we're building out our roads, like extending Truman out, keeping up with our road maintenance and all that kind of stuff. That only leaves 1% of the sales tax to go to general fund. And general fund is what funds the police department, parks department, administration, all of those other things. So again, and I think we've pointed this out before, but just as an example, just in the general fund, if we want to look at the police department only, we bring in about $3.4 million on general sales tax. That's just the sales tax, that use tax. PD runs about 3.7 just to run operations for that one department. That's not including the parks department and all administration. So you can see we have some challenges. I think we've done a fantastic job as a city. The councils have done a fantastic job of making wise decisions and being very, very frugal with how we've spent our money to this point. But I do want to mention also, because I think it's important to realize, we've not raised the general sales tax. And I'm talking general sales tax, not the transportation, that 1%. We've not done anything to raise general sales tax since 1987. That's unheard of. To go that long as a community our size to keep up with the infrastructure and things that we have with our limited resources, again, it's a testament to not only staff, but the council and mayor and the past councils and mayors as well. And also, just for those that don't know, the city of Nixa has not collected personal property tax since 1987 either. That's something that a lot of cities still collect. We don't. It's something that back in 1987, the council decided they no longer wanted to collect that, so they stopped doing that. The other thing that briefly talk about is property tax overall, and here's kind of how that breaks down, because I think, again, that's a misconception. People think the city receives a lot of money on property tax. The reality is we only collect real property only, and that's about 30 cents on every dollar. So that's a small amount compared to, and that's how you can see the breakdown there of the percentages of where your property tax goes within the city. So now, where are we at currently with our sales tax? Well, this is where we're at. And I'll tell you, I won't stand here and tell you it's every single city in Southwest Missouri. I think I tried to capture them all, but I may have missed one or two small communities out there. But if you look at all the cities within Southwest Missouri, you can see where Nixa ranks on our current sales tax. Again, we bring in 1.5%, counting transportation. If you look at, we're in the same category as Niangua, Highlandville, Diggins, Crane, Battlefield, and Ava. Again, for a city our size, I think we've done a fantastic job affording the things that we have with such a low sales tax. Again, you can see all the way to the top, all the way leading to the top right now is the city of Republic. But if you look at all of our surrounding communities, like Republic and some of the other surrounding communities, you'll notice they have a lot of economic development going on right now. I can tell you a lot of that's because they've been able to afford the infrastructure that's needed to make those opportunities come about. And that's honestly where we're struggling, is making sure that we have the things that we need for economic development. Yes, roads, safe communities is a big part of that. Quality of life is a huge part of that. Overall infrastructure, water, sewer, all of those things matter when it comes to economic development. And you have to have those things in place before the development's going to come. It's a very rare moment that you'll have developers come in or big commercial developments come in without the infrastructure. That infrastructure needs to be there, and the quality of life needs to be there for those commercial developments, industrial developments, workforce. All of those things matter when you're looking at this stuff. So again, I just want to point out that we have to have those things in place. And again, I commend staff and council for the fantastic job that's been done over the many, many years since 1987 that we've been able to do the infrastructure and afford the infrastructure that we have been able to do with the current tax rate that we have. So again, I think that's a testament to the city being very frugal in the way that the finances are handled. All right, so we're proposing a 1 cent sales tax increase. Taking that to the public for consideration, for them to be able to consider whether or not they want to add that additional 1 cent sales tax to be able to afford the solutions that we brought before you tonight, including the police department expansion, the new sports complex, and the additional officers that we need to look at hiring. All those things, they cost money. And honestly, we cannot do them without this. It's just not possible. We don't have the financing available, the financials available to be able to afford, or the revenues to be able to afford to build the police department facility, the sports complex, to hire 11 officers. It's not there. As you know, last year, the chief came and needed 6 officers. We were able to afford 0 with our current budget. He got 0 officers this year because, again, we got limited revenues. So we know we have these challenges and we know we have to address them. So again, we're proposing we take a 1 cent sales tax to the public for consideration for them to decide if this is something that they want to be able to afford or to be able to pay for. What happens if we add that 1 cent? Where do we set? Well, again, if we added that 1 cent, we'd be at 2.5%. That would put us more in line with all of our surrounding communities. But again, not even at the top still yet. So again, I think that's very reasonable, and it puts us again in line with our surrounding communities on what the other communities are, where they're currently setting. All right, I want to also mention that this is part of our strategic plan. If you remember, these things came up multiple times with the strategic planning committee, and action steps were formed, and I'll just briefly go over those to show you that it is in line with what our strategic plan and our community has asked for. Our first category is high-performance government. Action plan number 3 said to identify and address staffing needs in order to meet the community demands and provide efficient services. That's what we're trying to do. We want to continue to provide the services that our community has come accustomed to. For example, I know the police department does a fantastic job providing a service to our community. We're continually named among the safest cities in the state. We want to continue that. But to continue that, we have to have the resources to do it. Again, community safety, action plan number 2, provide voters an opportunity to fund law enforcement operations and facilities to meet the community's growing needs and demands. And action step number 3 was to expand the police department facility to address the growth of the department and the need for additional workspace. Again, the strategic planning committee recognized these as possible needs for the future. So again, we're trying to address those. And then under fun and unique places, action plan number 8 was to develop new recreation spaces and renovate existing recreational spaces in accordance with the park's master plan in order to meet the recreational demands of the community. Again, that goes back to why we're redoing Macaulay Park, right? We're renovating that park facility to meet some of our growing demands. And again, the next part of that is new recreational spaces. That's where the Oath Park comes in that we're looking at. But as far as in the sports complex, that we want to provide that opportunity for our community. And it does fit the park's master plan that was done in 2020. If you remember, it was identified. Section 5-3-4 actually outlined the need for a potential fill house for our community back in 2020 when we actually did that master plan. And then action plan number 10 was to put forward at least one ballot issue which would provide voters an opportunity to fund the expansion of the parks department facilities and or operations. All right. Now, you might ask, do we think the public will support a sales tax initiative? Well, this year we did contract with Baker Tilly. Baker Tilly is our financial advisor for our city, and we did a survey of our community. Typically, they said this survey tends to be very accurate. They've had a success rate of about, I don't remember, 98%, I believe, is their success rate on their survey. So it's very, very accurate as far as that goes. So I'm going to go over a little bit really quickly and talk about some of those results real quick. So we did receive those. Well, the slides we're missing a couple slides there, Drew. That's all right. No, I think we're good. Here we go. I just missed it. The initial support for a sales tax. I apologize, Drew. It's there. The initial support for a sales tax. Basically what happened is the survey asked the community, would you support a sales tax for parks and police, period? Without knowing any other information, just your initial response, would you support it? 53% of those surveyed said yes, they would support a sales tax for parks and police, not knowing any other information. And then 19% had no opinion at that point, again, not being informed. And then 28% opposed the sales tax. And then they looked at the police department and they compared initial versus informed support. So that 54% that we saw here, or 53% at the beginning, it was actually 53.4. So 53% of the initial response, they said, okay, now if you knew the need for the space the police department has, and you knew the need for the additional 11 officers that the staffing study shows that we need for today, would you support a potential sales tax? And that rose from 53% to 66.8% that would support that sales tax knowing that information. They said the same thing for the parks. If you knew that the parks facilities, the current X Center is completely packed out 85 to 90% of the time, would you support that additional sports facility? And that rose to 56% said they would support that type of sales tax to support that type of facility. I wanted to talk quickly about a couple other results that came out of that survey because I think they were interesting. 84% of those surveyed gave the police department a rating of excellent or good. with 72% of those surveyed giving the Parks and Recreation a rating of excellent or good. Yeah, that's fantastic. I was very, very pleased with that. With you got that large of a percentage of your community that was surveyed that said the services you're providing are excellent or good. That's fantastic. That's an accolade to the chief and Matt both. They're doing a fantastic job, again, with the resources that they currently have. 96% believe that the police services are important to making the community safe. 93% of those surveyed believe that parks and recreation facilities are important for the quality of life. And then 86% believe parks and rec facilities are important for attracting families to Nixa. So those things are important to our community. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, community support. This was kind of another interesting that they went kind of out of their way to really point out to us when they presented staff with these survey results. They basically said, they posed the survey that said, I would never vote for a tax increase no matter the amount or how the money raised would be used. Typically, when they ask that question, they run 15 to 25% of the people surveyed said they would not vote for a tax no matter what. They said we had the lowest percent that they had ever seen since they'd been doing this survey at 9%. So they said that was pretty telling about our community and the support that our community has for both the parks and the police and the city of Nixa as a whole. Conclusion, at the end, they said that survey showed that the community may support a 1 cent general sales tax increase to support both the police and the parks. So that was very, very good information, I thought, that came out of that survey. Again, tonight we're presenting that we take to the voter of the people a option to be able to put a 1 cent sales tax before them to be able to fund the parks and the police department needs. Now, I'm going to turn it over again to Show Me Christian County to talk a little more about the economic development impact that these type of things have on a community, and then I'll come back up and wrap it up kind of with a timeline and what that would look like.
Hey, Jimmy, can I ask a quick question?
You
How
sure
many
can.
people were surveyed?
They guaranteed at least 300 out of the community, which is the number that they suggested for a community our size.
Okay.
Yep. And we were guaranteed a minimum of that. Yep. Very good. Any other questions? Sorry. Okay. Great. Oh, Anna Evans and Kristen Hazeltine from Show Me.
Oh, I need the clicker. You can click for me. All right. Thank you, everybody. Once again, Anna Evans with Show Me Christian County. We serve as the economic development organization for Christian County as a whole. Several of the leaders in this room are consistently in the room with us every single month, or more often than that, as we discuss what we're seeing as trends that are happening on the state level that trickles down to our region, and then how that affects us on a day-to-day basis here in Christian County, and sometimes even to an individual community level. So again, please feel free to ask questions. We do. There is a lot of information in these slides, and I really don't want to, do that thing where someone reads every single word of their PowerPoint to you. So we will make these available to you if you are interested in the data afterward. But please do ask questions, and again, more than happy to answer or clarify. So really, really quickly, just setting the stage for some expectations. An economically healthy community, what does that look like? For each community, it's a little bit different, depends heavily on how your economy is structured. Thankfully, here in Southwest Missouri, typically our cities are pretty diversified. We don't rely on one particular industry to be doing very well at all times for our city to function at an optimal level. But one thing I do want to point out is that specifically in the context of what we're talking about, we want to identify ways, not just as an economic development organization, but as the Nixa community, it's important for us to figure out how to, that third thing on the slide you see there, to export goods and services and import cash. What does that mean? We have a huge percentage of our folks who get up in the morning every single day and locate out of our community to go work elsewhere, right? So that means that they are, unfortunately, a lot of times that means that maybe people who live in our community aren't as connected to our community as we hope that they would be. Both of these proposals, I think, in their own ways, address some of that disconnect. We want to feel like we live in a safe community. We want to feel like we have opportunities for our families and for all ages to get together and connect, not just through sports, but through social opportunities for recreation. So whenever we invest in those types of things, not only are we forming the basis for a connected community of folks who already live here, but we're also helping set the stage economically for bringing in outside dollars that currently aren't being spent in our community on a day-to-day basis into our community to form that tax base.
So, really, really quickly, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it, but he talked about, a city administrator talked about the general sales tax rate being that 1% not have been raised since 1987. Number one, I did not know that, and that floored me. That is amazing. So again, as Mr. Lyles said, kudos to past councils and mayors and the past city leadership that has made those frugal decisions to keep Nixa in the position that they're in. But let's think about 1987. What did economic development, AKA attracting businesses, retaining businesses, making sure that your people have jobs, what did that look like then? If you see that arrow on the left side of the screen at the very top, the very first step was recruiting that company, right? Chasing smokestacks, you would put someone like Kristen on a plane, you might send Jimmy along with her, potentially Mayor Steele, and you would put them on a plane and you would send them to Chicago or to Dallas or to New York or to wherever a company was located, and they would go through this whole sales pitch about why Nixa is the very best place in the country to live, work, and play. You heard that language before? Every single place in the country is the best place to live, work, and play, according to economic developers. I'll just tell you that. So in 1987, we're talking about recruiting companies, and the if we build it, they will come mindset was really kind of the predominant way that things actually worked. We recruited a company. That company then moved in. The company's presence itself, an investment into the community, attracted the people. So we could move, we could have a company that has a headquarters in Dallas. They could move and open a manufacturing facility in Nebraska, and people would move to that community to work at that factory. So then whenever you start to get the people, right, the residents that move into your community, as we've seen our rapid residential growth, then the logic was, your community is just going to kind of magically improve itself. More people means more business investment, et cetera, et cetera. Let's think about the differences between 1987 and today. Let's take that formula and completely flip it on its head. So what is our number one priority at this point whenever we're talking about gaining business investment and recruiting new employers to our community? On the right side of the screen, you see that very top arrow up at the top. We're talking about recruiting and retaining talent. So a company is not going to go to a place and then expect other people to come to them. A company is going to look at where are the people already. And they're going to have an enormous algorithm, and they're going to employ, depending on the company, they're going to employ site selectors that have all of these different factors that weigh into, these top recommendations. And then basically they're going to go through this complicated process of what's most important to them, and they're going to narrow down and funnel till they get to maybe their top 3 or 4 choices. And then at that point, the numbers are going to tell them what those top 3 and 4 choices are, and then they're starting to actually take a look. Oh, look, this one's in Missouri. Let's see, Nixa, Missouri. What are they all about? What's their history? What's their culture like? And so then at that point, you're even in the consideration. So it takes quite a bit up front to even get to that point where you've been funneled down as an option. But we know through various research, we talk to these site consultants. That's a big part of what we do on behalf of the communities that are here in Christian County. What matters to these companies when they're making those decisions? And this, of course, this is from a 2018 survey, so it's a little bit dated at this point, but typically over the past few years, these top 5 have all remained the same, and maybe their position on the list might change a little bit. But we have seen the number 1 consideration, highway accessibility. That's great for us. We're, here in Missouri, we're centrally located. We have access to great transportation and logistics. We're doing pretty well on that front. Second, we've got labor costs. How expensive is it going to be to get the people who have the skills that we need? We're also talking about skilled labor. You can go where there's a lot of people, but if you're a particular company that needs XYZ skill, then a lot of people doesn't really matter because you need a certain percentage of them to be very skilled in this one particular area. Fourth, and this is what I really want to emphasize, quality of life. Now that means something different, maybe to different folks. If you're a CEO living in Austin, quality of life might mean something different to you than if you're a VP of finance that lives in New York. However, we know that whenever people are thinking about quality of life, they're number 1, thinking of their employees and their families, but they're also thinking, if you're the CEO of a company and you're looking at an expansion, is this a community where I want to send my kids to school? Is this a community that has the amenities that I want to be able to really invest in and not just get what I need, but get what I want, be part of the community there? So quality of life, it's intangible, but there are ways that we can measure it and market it to the particular industries that we want, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. And then, of course, any company is going to tell you, tax incentives, what can you do for me, et cetera, et cetera. That's always going to be one of the considerations. But quality of life is genuinely very, very important. So, let me take a breath for a second. Whew. Okay. When we talk about quality of life, I'm sure every single one of you in this room have been in conversations where the word placemaking pops up, right? And that means something different to every single person. The city of Denver put a big blue horse outside of their airport. That sounds kind of silly. That is like the #1 selfie, location. People stop and they go to the Denver airport and then they post on social media to all of their friends, hey, I was at the Denver airport. If you flew the Denver airport without a big blue horse out there, would you have posted on social media excited to be at the Denver airport? No. So I'm not saying that Nixa needs a big blue horse. I'm saying that we can consider what is our big blue horse, right? What makes our community actually unique. We're all talking about, we want a great place to live, work, and play. So does everywhere else. But what makes Nixa, Nixa? And what are the values that our residents have? And what have we heard from them that they say they want? So when we talk about placemaking, we're really talking about a lot of intangible concepts. So we hear our people say, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with local people who say, I didn't grow up here in Nixa. How many of you here in this room didn't grow up in Nixa? Several, right? A lot of folks. And as we've seen through our residential growth, tons of folks have moved here and have become invested in the community. And not just are living here and, getting up and going and living the rest of their lives elsewhere, but they're here in the community and investing their time, as you can see, being a citizen and being part of the community. What moves someone from a new transplant to the community to a few years later an active participation who feels like it's their community and it's their hometown? It's some of this intangible stuff. So when we say we want a community that prioritizes small town hospitality, that's a feeling, right? You can't put that measurable on a piece of paper and say Nixa had a 76% hospitality rating. That means something different to every person. But what we can do is have these types of conversations that we're having and say, okay, if quality of life in our community, in our county, in our region, in our part of the world means, for example, access to outdoor recreation, then we can use some logic and say, hey, our Parks and Recreation Department could use some help. If we want to appeal to people not just of a certain particular age, but of all ages, get someone invested into our community and then keep them here, then there are things that we can do to make these very intangible concepts tangible. That's a challenge, and that is why all of us are here in this room. But I think we've, again, heard some pretty interesting proposals for how to potentially make some of that happen. So when we talk about recreation specifically, Parks and Recreation can encompass, depending on your community, can encompass a whole variety of different various things. And again, I don't want to read every single word to you, but there's a lot of data that talks about the effect of recreational opportunities and that social connection and community on the local economy and raising that local tax base, which again, I would say from our economic development perspective is really our goal and kind of our dog in the fight, I would say. Just want to give a quick overview. We talked a little bit earlier about a hotel study. What's the feasibility for Nixa to be able to build and house and occupy a hotel? Well, we look at the state level, and this is from the Missouri Department of Tourism, just in percentage of actual sales, that third bullet point down there, actual sales, not projections. When you compare it in January to May of 2022, compared to January to May of 2019, places to eat increased in sales by 12.3%. Places to stay across, and this is our state, this is not the nation, Missouri specifically. Places to stay, sales increased 6.7%, and that did not include short-term rentals. That is just looking at hotels. And then things to do, actual sales increased nearly 21%. So as far as our state in particular, tourism is on the rise. Outdoor recreation and indoor recreation like sports tourism is a huge part of that. And we know that we sit here in Nixa on a visitor funnel in our part of the country of about, and this is kind of an estimate from the CVB, about 11 million visitors a year between Springfield and Branson, right? So how do we, again, be a healthy community economically that takes those dollars that maybe on a day-to-day basis aren't being spent here and get them to come here and be spent in our community? Whew. Goodness gracious. I'm sorry. I'm really trying to get through this quickly. Okay. So we talk about, well, and that's even a concept that we'll talk about a little bit later, but let's talk about real property values now, because that's how I ordered my slides. We look at homes within half a mile of parks and outdoor spaces. And when we talk about parks, we're also talking about parks facilities as well. So when we say parks, it's all encompassing. It's not just literally like a playground. Homes within half a mile of parks facilities, and natural outdoor spaces are usually valued between 8 and 20% higher than comparable properties. And that also goes for commercial property. I didn't have a link to the study, but there was a study done where I saw approximately a $37 per square foot increase in a value of commercial property within close proximity to parks, walkability, outdoor recreation, et cetera. Additionally, we talked about that business funnel. You know, how do businesses decide where they want to locate? How do they prioritize? How important is quality of life to them in their overall evaluation? Walkability, access to parks and recreation amenities, and proximity to greenery, what we've seen from an economic development perspective, are continually increasing in how much they are weighted in commercial property decisions. And that's for several reasons, but not the least of which, especially as we've seen over the past 2.5 years or so, not just physical health, but mental health of employees. It's a real consideration in the tight labor market that we have with companies wanting to retain the talent that they have. So this is an amenity for their employees that they're using specifically in their evaluations of whether one particular site is better than another. We also, we talk about, parks and recreation, and a lot of times we think of people with families, small kids, school-age kids, folks that are kind of college age, traveling in leagues, things like that. We also want to talk about when we think of our economy and we think of increasing our daytime population, people who are going to stay here, be invested in the community, and not leave the community for whatever career they might have throughout every single day. Attraction and retention of affluent retirees. And that is played out just by looking at demographics. The U.S. Census Bureau says that by 2050, 1 in 4 Americans will be 65 years of age or older. So, what do we know? We know that our residents who already live here are going to be aging, and we know that we are going to be a fantastic, potentially attractor or magnet for those affluent retirees who are healthy, who are mobile, and want somewhere to live, again, that not just meets the needs of their lives, but meets that recreational want that they have. And it's not just the opportunity to stay active and participate in recreation opportunities, but also those recreational opportunities help form those communities that meet their social needs. So we're really excited about the potential of, utilizing and kind of marketing, really, the amenities that we have here in the county to a population that really might do a lot to help us increase the amount of people who stay in our communities during the day. Finally, we also want to talk about retention of those knowledge workers. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on this. You all know what I mean. There's more of an opportunity than ever for working age people to live in one place and work for a community or for a company that's located somewhere else. So why on earth wouldn't those people want to live here in Nixa? So whenever we talk about the investment that we make into our own communities, these are the type of people who see, oh, your community is investing into yourselves. You know, you're growing, you're progressive, you're taking the steps to be a sustainable community and to grow with me as I grow in my career for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And then finally, when we talk about recreation as an amenity to these types of folks, we're not just talking about the sports aspect of it. We're also talking about facilities that provide opportunities for potential growing families. So things like, you know, parks facilities that host movie nights or that host community festivals or things like that. Those are all opportunities to get these types of people, again, involved and to help form that foundation of a community of people who want to, you know, be unified together and feel like I've found my new hometown. I'm here, I'm a part of Nixa, I'm excited about it, it's growing, I want to tell my friends about it. And then finally, sports tourism. So sports tourism, I didn't even know this, and you wouldn't know to look at me, but I myself have participated in sports tourism, believe it or not. It is the widest and fastest growing area in tourism in general. So outdoor recreation, sports tourism, sometimes they go hand in hand, but sports tourism specifically, whether it is that you yourself are traveling to learn or participate in a sport, you're traveling to watch a sporting event, you're traveling to visit a sports-related venue like a Hall of Fame or an Olympic Village or something like that, or even if you're just passively engaging in a sport activity while you travel. How many people do we know come down to Branson, and they don't necessarily come to Branson specifically because they're going to get up every single day and go golf. But while they're in Branson, they're definitely going to go golf, right? That is an aspect of tourism and sports marketing that we can take advantage of here in our community. So we have tangible benefits of sports marketing, and obviously we think, you know, economic activity, people coming in, spending money at restaurants, spending money at local retailers, convenience stores, et cetera. But we also have some intangible benefits. So when someone comes into your community and say it's their first time here, you know, and maybe their kid has a tournament or what have you, and they travel in and there's things for them to do and it goes well, what are the odds that that tournament's going to come back? That's pretty high, right? So we potentially have access to a funnel of very high yield visitors that aren't just going to be one time. We have a funnel of people who are going to potentially come back. And again, I go back to how many folks, you know, here in the room or in your conversations out in the community, were not Nixa or Christian County natives, but were here, visited the area, were here, you know, just by happenstance in Southwest Missouri, fell in love with the area, and now are here and involved members of our community. So there's far-reaching aspects beyond just that immediate economic activity, but that also does not help, or does not hurt. So, placemaking, once again, I come back to this slide. When we talk about taking these very intangible benefits and figuring out how to drill down and turn those into tangible action steps we can take, I hope those slides give you some more context for how we, you know, come at this from an economic and a financial perspective. But again, the bottom line is Show Me Christian County as an organization is happy to support local efforts across our county, but especially here in Nixa, to again provide those very needed community services to positively impact the economy, not just of Nixa, but of the county and the region, because that's what these types of projects will do. The benefits of you know, an improved economy don't stop at the borders of your city. And then finally, providing a better quality of life to citizens, visitors, and potentially those who might join our workforce as well. Please ask me if you have any questions. Again, my name is Anna. Kristen is here as well. Mr. Lyles knows how to get a hold of us, and we're just happy to be here and clarify any information for you.
Any questions? Thank you,
Okay.
Anna.
Very good job, Anna, thank you. That was a lot to get out. Good job.
A lot of stuff.
Did great. Yeah. Again, just to talk about again what Anna talked about, the economic benefits of having a safe community in parks facilities is, you know, again, it'd be fantastic for not just our community, but also not just new businesses, but our current businesses as well. Anytime you have a facility like a sports complex that's going to bring in tournaments and other things like that, all your restaurants are going to benefit, your shopping, your retail is going to benefit, all that kind of stuff. So there is a huge impact. And I really appreciate Show Me Christian County and Kristen and Anna recognizing that and being willing to speak with council tonight. So what does this look like timeline if we were to move forward with this? Well, obviously, we're asking that we put a ballot measure before the community for that to see if they'd be willing to support additional 1 cent sales tax to address some of these needs and challenges that we have. We would like to take that to the public in the November election, which again, that's why we're bringing it tonight, and then for second reading at the next meeting. If that does pass, obviously, it takes about 2 quarters or so to start seeing those revenues come in before we start actually seeing that additional sales tax come in. And then our plan would be to start addressing the officers, the additional officer needs as quickly as possible, so we can start looking at potentially adding additional officers. Now, I know Chief can tell you he can't handle hiring 11 officers day one. It's just not possible. We don't have that many people to train and the equipment and all those kind of things. So we got to phase those in. So we would be looking at hiring additional officers, 3 to 4 a year, something like that, to try to phase those in until we get those needs met. And then the facilities. Obviously, we don't have the staffing to address all of these at one time, but we did look at a staggered approach. And as it was alluded to earlier, the Chief alluded to, we would be moving utility billing over here to City Hall in unoccupied space up in the front part of the building. We have the space for that, so we would be looking at renovating that area and moving utility billing over here, which would open up the space for the PD. We would start with the sports complex. We would look at building that as quickly as we could once we get it. Again, these are conceptual designs. We'd have to do full-blown design and architectural work on that, and once that's done, we would start that facility as quick as we possibly could. Then once that facility is complete, we'd want to get that up and running because, again, the sports tourism is huge, the potential economic development impact is huge, and that facility also, over time, Matt will be working on making that facility self-sustainable. Again, bringing in the revenues and things of that nature to be able to handle the maintenance costs, personnel costs, because we got to remember, these costs are more than just a building. You know, we build a new police department. We got to be able to handle the maintenance and the cleaning of that. So we got to hire additional personnel. We do the sports complex. We got to hire the people to run it, to clean it, to maintain it. All of those kind of things we can't forget. And we have looked at all of those and ran those numbers. We did also visit with our financial advisors about the affordability of this and the staggered approach. So that's what we're looking at. If it was passed, is to start with the sports center. And also start with utility billing and getting that City Hall remodeled to get them moved over. And then once the sports center is done, we would move into the police department. I think it's also important to mention that our current police department, we still owe money on it. It is through the PVC, the Public Building Corporation. And so we cannot demolish that building until it's paid off. It will be paid off in 2026, which works out pretty well because, again, the police department can continue to operate out of that building while we're building the new facility. And then once the new facility is up and running, that building will be paid off and we'll be able to turn that into additional parking and secured parking for the police department. So I know we threw a lot of information at you tonight, and we took quite a bit of time, but this is an important topic. I think it's very vital for us as we move forward to look at all the options and to really consider this seriously. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I know Chief and Matt, both architects are here as well. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions? A lot of information.
It's a lot.
We will work to digest it.
All right,
Thank you very much, Mr.
fantastic.
Miles.
Thank you.
So we'll open up the public hearing if anyone would like to speak to this item.
I'm Jack Carnes, live in Nixa, Missouri. Matt, would you say the biggest need at the...
Mr. Kearns, please address your comments to the council, and then we'll
Okay, I'll
bring
ask
in them
you.
if you got a question.
Is the biggest need for a recreational facility for youth basketball, volleyball, using the basketball courts? Do you know that, Mr. Steele?
Yes,
Okay.
that's definitely one of the critical things that was in the strategic plan and that Matt's brought up multiple times, is that, yeah, we only have the one basketball gym at the community center now, and we're running
No,
over
my
1,000
my question is that the biggest need for a new facility? Gymnasium work, that's my question. Is the biggest need for a gymnasium, more space for a gymnasium? You can answer that?
Will Matt answer that?
It would be among those, definitely.
Would that be really the first?
There's a lot of need.
Yeah, that's what I
That
thought.
That would be among those.
But is
we're
that the
not
greatest
limiting-
need?
So we're not limiting use.
That's the greatest need?
It's up there, yes.
Okay. My question, because where I previously lived on the East Coast, we used the gymnasiums at all the schools. And at that time, we only had 3 schools. So as the growth continued to explode, they've actually closed one in the elementary schools. So now they're down to 2 schools because growth plateaued and leveled off. So I'm just curious to know if it makes sense to use the schools until, because I'm on board with everything in the presentation. The presentation was phenomenal. But I was just curious if we could, in the meantime, use the schools.
We definitely have been using the schools,
I know.
the last 20 years, but we've seen a reduction in the amount of space that they're able to give us because of increases in programs that they're holding in their gyms. So they have limited us down to just 2 part-time now, I think, Matt.
Currently, yeah, we are using 2. I've been with the city since '95.
And you can't use any of the other schools?
At this time, they are already programmed, is my understanding.
They program, they allow other people to rent them as well. They program volleyball out of them, basketball, other things out of them as well.
I just thought that would be a
we
good use of
definitely-
the schools.
We've looked at
That's
using
all.
the schools. We looked at using churches. Tried to use churches. We've used private gymnasiums in the past. We've tried to find a lot of different ways to skin that.
Yeah,
We
that's what
used
I would think,
6,
yeah.
And we're down to 2.
2?
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing, have we considered about why don't we have a phenomenal industrial park that would help the tax base?
That would be great. Yeah,
Why?
as you saw from that chart, we have the lowest tax rate in the region. And so when you ask when people ask, so why don't we have what Republic has, or why don't we have what Ozark has, or why don't we have what Springfield has, Republic receives more parks money than we receive for our entire budget. So they are able to build those types of things and invest in the infrastructure, like Mr. Lyles was saying. They're able to invest in infrastructure to draw in an industrial park. I would love to build an industrial park. We don't have the money to even buy the land to start to develop an industrial park because we are spending more than our entire taxes that we receive. We spend more than that on the police department. So
Right.
if there's no extra, so we scrape and try to find everything we can to
Yeah.
provide the services that we currently do.
Yeah.
We would love to invest in things like trails. We'd love to invest in things like industrial parks or additional ball fields. I know Matt would love to have that as well. So this is, these are the first set of things that we're looking at. These are, high priority items that would
Yeah.
benefit the entire community. And once we have that income coming in, we'll have the ability to invest in these other things long term.
I know one of the biggest stumbling blocks is Christian County is the second highest taxed county in the entire state. So I know that that's going to be something that you're going to have to overcome, because I got an issue.
I don't believe that is true. I'm not sure.
Next to
I'm not
St.
sure-
Louis County, Christian County is the second highest county.
I think Mr. Lyles showed the graph that we are the lowest. We have the lowest sales tax in the entire region.
You're right, but you're missing the point. I'm just saying that's going to be something that you're going to have to overcome, because I can tell you for a fact, Christian County is the second highest county tax rate in the state. So, just an FYI. Again, I'm on board with it all. You're not in opposition. I'm just telling you that and asking a couple questions.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think I'd be really interested in seeing where that number comes from. I have seen people say that, but I don't believe that is true. So, I will leave them public hearing. If anyone else would like to speak.
Hello, Elizabeth Dudash-Buskirk again. I was fully prepared to come in here with almost a cheerleader's uniform on when I heard that we were going to raise 1% for parks and for the police. I have multiple reasons for feeling that way. The police, even though I may disagree if they pull me over, I totally 100% feel safe in this town. And their response time has been extremely good. And 3 calls per officer per day is amazing. Being raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, believe me, we would die for that. That's just, it's phenomenal. That's great. Do you need a new facility? In order to cure my insomnia, I listen to true crime podcasts at night, and yes, you need more facilities. That evidence room is scary to me. So yeah, let's get on that. I'm totally 100% on board. So then the question comes in, then why am I suddenly not as cheerful as I was when I walked in? And it has to do with one very big distinction that apparently I'm the only person that makes, me and very few, I guess, which is that a park is not a rec center. I work at Missouri State University. Rec center debates are kind of our thing. We're #2 in the nation with the coolest rec center ever or whatever the heck's going on. That doesn't make the school any better. We've got the Bobby Allison Fields up not only in Springfield but on the north side right by the airport. My guess is there should be a hotel that goes in there or something for people to use those fields. We don't have a golf course. There is a rec center just up on Republic that is available to anybody who wants to use it. And our X Center, pretty nice. It's pretty nice the way that it is, but it's also not affordable to everybody in Nixa. In fact, there's a good number of people, I'll bet if you did a little poll, that can't afford the X Center. That means their children need to go somewhere else to play. When it's not July, usually that means outside. So let's talk about that for a second. Outside parks versus rec centers. Rotary Park is in a bit of disarray. It could use some work. My daughter likes to go over there and play volleyball. If I could move, I would play tennis. My son loves to play basketball. We don't always feel safe there late at night, but why are we doing sports late at night? So it seems like a good place to go, but it needs some improvement. I think anybody who's walked there knows that. And it's right across from the Legion, which has just done a ton of reservations that you guys heard about tonight. I've used that facility multiple times. I pay the rent. It's fantastic. And then you look across the street, well, I think it's a street, and you just see a mess. There is a tiny, tiny, tiny little dog park, I think that's what it is, over just across the street here, right next to Brown Derby. Great place to put a walking park, let me tell you. Yeah, you're looking at me confused, Amy. It's over there. Trust me. It's probably about 2 blocks worth of something. And then maybe it is, maybe it's not park, which I thought was going in at the intersection of Northview and Gregg, but instead we put an unnecessary roundabout there. I am not concerned about raising taxes for parks and for police. And I feel pretty good about the way money is being spent with the police, apparently, because things are efficient here. Granted, my comparison is a low bar. Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, low bar. But we do a great job there, and I want to support that. I want the building, I want everything. In fact, I'll give a 2% raise if you want me to for that, because I want to feel safe. But what's the point of building up a police department to feel safe when you're doing everything indoors anyway? When you're wasting money that children can't afford to go and use? When all we need to do is improve a little bit on the promises that were made a long time ago with Rotary Park, with whatever that park is, and, with the park at the end of Northview on Gray. So I'm just gonna ask this. Yay, rah, go, raise the taxes. It is extremely high. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania has a lower tax rate than we do here, by the way. They have a terrible police department. Raise the money, make the police as good as they can be, which I think they are, but keep that going. But for the love of God, stop pretending like the word parks means a rec center. It's just not.
Thank you. So the Woodfield Park across the street is a garden park, so it's maintained. We actually do have a full-size dog park down on South Norton Road, so go check that out. That's a great park as well. As far as maintenance on the parks, we could definitely do a better job with that. And so that's something, again, I think another thing that we definitely could invest more into, or if we could even find the employees that we currently have staffed that are supposed to do that job, that would be great as well. So if you know anybody that would like a parks maintenance job, I think we have 2 or 3 of those available. So we'd be happy to get some more people to work on those projects as well. The Gregg Road and Northview, we had we did purchase property for that, and we put a ballot initiative forward to fund that park, and which failed. So in this particular case, we're not going to invest in additional land until we have the funding to provide all of these things. And one of the benefits of the police plan, I think, is that we're able to use the land we currently have, so we don't have to purchase additional expensive land for that project. Did I answer everything? Did I get everything? Okay, so we'll leave the public hearing open.
Jeannie Coburn, Nixa, Missouri. I am of the age bracket of 50 to 60. I have a master's degree. I make plenty of money, but, and I moved here specifically for the school district. But I also work with people who, 100% of my clients are on Medicaid. And I was a school teacher in a school district where over 50% of the students were on free or reduced lunch. Nixa has an average household income of $68,185 with a poverty rate of 8.2%. I am all for a bigger police department, and I am all for a great rec center. And yes, I've been in there when the basketball court's trying to be used and it's too small. Yes, agree. I have to. Well, Elizabeth and I are friends. We didn't discuss this ahead of time. We just happen to have similar views. I think that we need to purchase acreage, and I know that has to go through a bond issue and has to be voted upon, and that's different than a sales tax. But we need green space in this town. We just need it. We need places for people to walk. We need places for people to ride their bikes. We need places for kids to play on the playgrounds. We don't have enough of that, especially on the west side. Indoor parks involve people who come and spend money on the activities. Yes. League sports. Yes. Sports tourism. Yes. It is big money. Yes. The city will make money. Yes. People will come and spend money in Nixa. I guess a little bit of my concern are the kids of Nixa first before the city makes money. I'm wondering why we don't have a real property tax on land anymore here. I understand that that would not be popular, and I get that.
We actually do have real property tax.
Okay.
We don't have private property. So
Okay,
you don't have to pay for
private
your
property
cars
tax.
or-
Okay, so I guess my little bit of a beef about a sales tax is that that's digging into a higher percentage of a disposable income for a lower income family than it is of a median or higher income family. And the people who are going to be paying that are people who live here, who are buying groceries and gasoline and other things in the city. Yes, people come to Nixa to live here because of the schools, because we are a bedroom community to Springfield. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have industry. I think we should. I'm not sure if maybe you can answer me on what the industry in Nixa pays for tax or how many tax write-offs they've gotten to bring their industry here. But that might be something to consider in the future. I'm curious, how long ago was the police department survey done that was done before this one?
I think you do a yearly survey, correct, Gene?
Mayor, council, can you hear me? Yeah, so we do that on an annual basis.
Okay.
And so that is updated, and then our projections are on a 5-year projection. And then we but in doing that, you can also project out farther than that. But we update that annually, and that information is presented to the mayor and council and CA Lyles at budget time every year for our needs, and also given to the mayor and council in our annual report to some degree.
Very good, thank you, I appreciate that. It was mentioned about an educated workforce, and I totally agree with that. And I know that Nixa's school system is very highly rated, and that's a number-one reason why people move here. That's a number-one reason why we went from 5,000 people in 1995 to where we're at now. Dr. Kleinschmidt is probably a big part of that, to be thanked for that. But there are he just got the ball rolling, I understand that. So in all, I support this tax with some reservations. And that being that I think we need more green space, and I also think that, you know, I know we need a larger recreation facility, but I'm concerned about the children of Nixa, not on the tourism that these facilities particularly bring to Nixa. So that's it.
Yeah, and to comment on that, we really didn't outline any, you know, what we were outlining here were things that we thought we needed in addition to what we currently have. And so we're working on adding green space. We're already working on a master plan for the O Family Park, which is a little ways out, but is going to become closer and closer as we continue to grow. Also, we are spending $1 million this year to upgrade Macaulay Park. So we are working on the green spaces we have, trying to add new green spaces as best we can. We're also working on trail plans and other things like that. But those are things that we probably can fund, or we'll figure out a way to fund at some point. We've been able to save a couple $1 million over the last 5 or 6 years that were 10, Matt's correcting me, 10 years that we're able to then utilize for that. We also have impact fees for our parks and our police department, which do help us fund some of that growth as well. So just because we didn't say that in this presentation that we were going to do those other things doesn't mean we're not going to do them. We specifically told staff not to give us anything that we were already going to pay for, not to say that we only wanted things that we are planning in addition that would be beneficial from this. Somewhat right there? Okay.
Yep, no, you're
Close
correct, Mayor. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting next week to talk trails and locations and things. So we're constantly, we recognize the need, and we are constantly looking at that on a continuing basis, absolutely.
So,
Last Thursday, we also kicked off on the north parcel of the Ove property design. And so public input will be a part of that element probably sometime in the month of October.
You said we're working on the design, going to have public hearings on, or public input on the design of the. So, leave the public hearing open. Governor Sanders.
I'm going to agree with some of the previous speakers, but for different reasons. Where's the best steak in Nixa here? Anybody throw a name out there? Yeah, there's no steakhouse. I don't think we have a good steakhouse or a high-end place to go get a steak here. There's a point to this. Who's the largest employer in Nixa?
School district.
I believe it's the Nixa School District, right? It makes us a government town. You know, government money here. No. Who's the biggest employer for all of the people that live here in Nixa, though? That would be the colleges, the medical facilities up in Springfield. I'm guessing 60 to 70% of the working people that live in Nixa drive up 160 or drive up Nicholas Road up to Springfield, and they work in Springfield all day, which means that they get their lunch in Springfield. They probably go grab their groceries on their way home in Springfield for a lot of things. Right now, 60 to 70% of your breadwinners are spending most of their money in Springfield. They are plussing up the tax base for Springfield. Plus, if you want a good steak, you got to go to Springfield. See how I tied that in right there? There might be some place that has a good steak here. I just haven't found it yet.
Piccolo's got a really good steak.
The Italian place, right? Yeah. And they got some other good food there too. But how can commercial and industrial work and work out and survive in Nixa? The majority of places that have breakfast can't really function. You can't have too many places for breakfast here in Nixa because the majority of the people, they're going to grab their food either from home or on their way up to Springfield. So sit-down breakfasts, the only way for anybody to make money is on the weekends. And then they're packed. You try to go over here downtown, they're packed. You try to go anywhere for breakfast, they're packed on the weekends. But they're completely empty during the week because the majority of the people who can go eat breakfast during the week, they're on fixed incomes. So they're not going to go out to breakfast that much. And especially on the week when all their friends are up there working or, they're going to get together at McDonald's because we're on a fixed income, we're limited. And then you look at daycare. Do we have a whole lot of daycare facilities in Nixa? Or is everybody relying on the school and the X Center, government services, for all of their daycare? So we're sending most of the money that everybody makes out of the city, and then we want to figure out why we don't have a good tax base. We don't have a good tax base because the majority of the people that live here spend the majority of their money outside of our city. And you can't blame the commercial spaces because nobody's here to spend the money during the week. They're all up there working. So you're never going to really develop that tax base until we bring more industrial here, until we bring more commercial space here where people are actually getting their $50,000 and $60,000 a year jobs here, where they just have to drive down the street, or they're working from home. And if they got Suddenlink, then maybe they're going to be calling you a lot because Suddenlink is not necessarily the best. But there's not a lot of competition right now either because Suddenlink's the only gig speed that we have here so far. I'm kind of painting a picture here. The majority of our money for our tax base is gone all week. I work on the north side of the city. If I come down here for lunch, I'm gone from my work for 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours. So I'm never going to spend my lunch money here unless I have an appointment or something. And that's 60 to 70% of the people that live here are dealing with that. And that's the reality of our situation. The other reality of our situation is traffic. Who's driving back and forth to Springfield? It takes me 20 minutes to get up to 60, and then only takes me like 10 minutes to go from Campbell all the way around up to Division Street. But it takes me 15 minutes, sometimes 20, just to get up there by where Sam's is. Everybody's driving that one route. So that's the reality. And we want to spend $13 million here, $25 million here. That's a very stiff price to pay whenever you look at your tax base, and your tax base is not going to grow that fast because everybody's working outside the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. We will leave open the public hearing. And we'll close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
To add on to what Mr. Sanders was saying, I mean, he's not wrong, but we also lose all of our tax base in the weekend going to Springfield to the field house to play in these basketball tournaments. And having kids that are in sports, you said you care about the kids. I had a basketball team. We practiced in my driveway. And 9-year-old girls on concrete, terrible idea. But we had no choice. I mean, Nixa Parks couldn't even open up a gym for me. The schools couldn't open up a gym for me. Springfield was booked up. I mean, there is a huge need. And I know every time we go to Stratford, I mean, it is literally if you build it, they will come. Because Stratford, Mount Vernon, they put these up, and go drive by there on the weekends. Heck, any weekday night, because that's the only place that you can practice. And I mean, when you look at gym rental fees, I was paying, $40 an hour to find a gym somewhere. And we were gladly paying it, because the problem is, and it's happening in other communities, is you have a couple practices before season starts, and then once season starts, they've cut out practices because they don't have the facilities. And just basketball, for an example, you learn way more than athletic skills and, friendships, education. There's so many things that you learn from sports. And obviously, the police department. When you look at what it was, and if you look at the other storage facilities, some of them that you finally can now not see daylight through the walls, there's a lot of needs. For about 2 weeks, I've been going through budgets of other cities, and it's hard to believe that Nixa has done this for so long. It is impressive, and I'm not patting myself on the back because I've only been on here for a couple of years. So it's been a lot of the people before me that have managed to make a penny last a lot longer than most. And it is interesting to look at financials year by year by year and see what was purchased and what was given up to do things. You know, I've also, the past couple weeks, I usually try to stay off of Facebook. I've started to look and see what some people are saying. Talk about not knowing where the city's money going. That's actually probably the craziest thing I've heard, because it's all here. Like, you can look at it every day, every month. At the end of every, and a lot of people don't realize this, but the last council meeting of every month, there's financial reports, there's cash reports, there's police reports, everything. You know what's going on. Look at all that, and then look at the budget and how much is getting done with such a small amount. It was, I mean, going back to, as much as I don't want to talk about it, COVID. That was one of the toughest times for my kids, because school shut down and all they had was sports when they did start back up. And then when they started back up, there was nowhere to go. And if one facility in this area shuts down, that cuts thousands of kids out of being able to play. And if we can fill that gap, and when you look at how many people come into an area, it's gotten crazy. Even for a third grade girls basketball tournament, I mean, 1,000 people show up. And that's what blows me away, is the amount that can bring in. And just on the weekend, go to Stratford. Go to the McDonald's that's at the truck stop and sit there around lunchtime. It is insane how packed it is, just because of one gym sitting on the side of 44. So I think there's a lot more that's involved with these facilities and what it can bring to the community, because people see and people hear. I mean, look what's going in close to the basketball facility in Joplin, the biggest gas stations in the world. Things like that can bring other things in. And once Jason Bourne put us on the map, but I think it's time to get past that, because that really doesn't bring us anything as far as businesses are concerned. But I think I like the designs of everything. I appreciate everything that you guys and your staff did, because I've been involved in some of these meetings, and it's been a long time coming and a lot of work. So I appreciate it, but that's what I got.
Yep, as Anna was saying earlier, if you have these things, it does bring those additional things. Mr. Sanders can get his steak. Where do you see a nice steakhouse? You see a nice steakhouse next to a hotel. Where do you see a hotel? Next to a large sports complex. Those are the types of things that draw in those businesses and build those types of things that make your tax base more sustainable, and create those opportunities to do those other things. You know, we do a great job with our recreational sports programs, providing scholarships to underprivileged children, trying to make it so that it is inclusive as possible within the ability that we have to fund it. And so I think those are the types of things that kind of growth and having those facilities and having that ability can do as you move forward.
Yeah, Mayor, and just to add to that, you're absolutely correct. Mr. Sanders makes the point, and it's a good point. We do lose a lot of our population in the city of Springfield. But as Anna did a fantastic job explaining, this is what drives the commercial and the industrial that Mr. Sanders is talking about that we need. This is what drives that, is quality of life and safe communities and transportation and all those other things that we're addressing on every day. I'll just make the comment that I couldn't tell you how many meetings I've been in with developers or site selectors, and I can tell you almost every one of them, one of the first questions they ask has to do with Parks and Rec facilities. They want the quality of life for their employees. That's what they're looking for. And that's a big part of the economic development driver that we need in our community. Yes, we need more green space. We need the sports centers. We need that kind of stuff to drive that commercial and to drive that industrial that we really want for our community. So.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. We will take a 5-minute recess and reconvene with our second readings. Call the meeting to order. Oh, now my mic works, okay. Move on to second readings in a rapid manner.
Second reading, Council Bill number 2022-074, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with D&E Plumbing for certain improvements to Truman Boulevard and amending the 2022 annual budget to appropriate funds for said contract.
All righty, Mayor and Council, the adoption of this ordinance would allow the city to enter into a contract with D&E Plumbing for $2.6 million to afford improvements to Truman Boulevard from Heather Glen Drive south to Pembroke Avenue. Would include roadway construction, water line installation, as well as electric installation. Approximately 80% of the road portion of the project at $1.5 million is reimbursable through our federal funds allotment from the OTO for the transportation portion of it. However, all city funds have to be expended and then reimbursed at the end of the project, which does necessitate a budget amendment for the road portion at $206,000 and the water portion at, the water portion at $206,000 and the road portion at $289,000. Staff has recommended approval of the project. We have had success working with D&E Plumbing in the past. They are the low bidder, and they were also came in lower than the engineer's estimate for the project. So staff does recommend approval.
Any questions? Thank you, Travis. We'll open up the public hearing. And we'll close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Justin Orff? Yes. Jared Giddens?
Yes.
Aaron Peterson?
Yes.
Amy Hookstrat?
Yes.
Sean Lucas?
Yes.
Second reading, Council Bill number 2022-075, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the mayor to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Nixa Public Schools for certain law enforcement services.
Mayor, Council, as presented last time, we were contacted by the Nixa School District with a request to enter into an MOU, or a memorandum of understanding concerning certain law enforcement activities and duties. As you know, the Nixa School District has decided to move forward with creating their own commissioned police department. And as a part of that statutory requirement, they need to have MOUs with all the municipal, all other surrounding law enforcement agencies. With this MOU, it spells out a lot of the duties and responsibilities of the school police department and how they relate to the Nixa Police Department. So for example, when you look at a little further into this MOU, you can see that they will not enforce ordinances or state statutes in any place. It will be limited to the school grounds, buses, and activities. Additionally, they will also limit their investigations to certain types of crime, and that is also dictated by statute as well. And those include felonies with threat of use of force, sex offenses, weapons offenses, misdemeanor marijuana where there's an adult involved, and then municipal ordinances, as I stated, and then serious or felony motor vehicle accidents as well, missing persons, and any other matter that we, as a police department, and they mutually agree upon. Last time, there were a number of questions that were specific to how the school district was going to maybe do some of their procedural things. So I had invited Captain Jason Hartzell, and he brought Lieutenant Sean Vorse of the Nixa School Police tonight to answer any of those questions. So if you have any questions about this specific MOU that I can answer, I'll be happy to do that. And then additionally, I can invite them up as well if you have any questions that in regard to maybe policies and procedures and things that the school district will engage in moving forward. Any questions for me?
I guess my one question would be, I know how a lot of things have been currently handled with it. It's pretty much county's jurisdiction at the school. So what will change as far as the relationship between the school police and Nixa, as far as if there's any big issues, will they be always bringing our officers in, or will county be brought in? How is that gonna work?
So generally speaking, whenever they investigate a crime and it's on school property, they're doing that under they're currently doing that under the commission of the sheriff's department, which allows them to enforce all the state statutes and any potentially, I guess, county ordinances if they were to have any as well. Whenever they move forward with this change to becoming their own entity or their own agency, they will work under their own commission, so they would be limited to those particular calls for service and those locations, their jurisdictional boundaries, and then we're brought in as an agency to do the other things that might come up whenever they're doing their law enforcement activity. So our relationship won't change substantially. They already call us for a number of things that they handle or don't want to handle, for example. So I don't really see a significant change in our day-to-day operational. Does that answer your question?
So maybe more specific scenario. So we had men at the junior high that was then investigated by the county police and not by the city police, even though the junior high is definitely within the city. So under this new arrangement, would that investigation then be handled by the city police?
Yes, if it's in the jurisdiction of our city borders. So for example, a scenario where we would not handle that would be Inman School, being outside our jurisdictional boundaries, so they would revert back to another municipal agency. And it would be under their purview to decide who they wanted to ask for mutual aid if it was something outside of their purview. I assume that they would be able to ask the county sheriff, state highway patrol, any overlapping jurisdictional law enforcement agency.
Do you think this could possibly give the Nixa Police Department more exposure with the younger kids in the community?
Potentially. I assume that could certainly be a thing. I spoke to Captain Hartzell tonight, and Lieutenant Vorse. We were talking about extracurricular activities and security. Historically, they used Christian County Sheriff's Department to do some of those things, like, for example, football games. There might be an opportunity for us to engage in that and have our officers represented there to help them out with their security and operational needs. And so there would be an opportunity for us to be more engaging in situations like that. We're certainly going to be called to these types of calls that occur in their jurisdiction, so we're going to be working hand in hand with them. We already talked about, creating an arrangement that would certainly be beneficial for both of us, so they could potentially initiate an investigation, call us and hand it over at that point, and then we would take the ball, so to speak, and run with it.
Any other questions?
No other.
I don't
Do you have any
remember what all the
questions?
I
were.
know. I feel like we should ask a lot of questions since you've been sitting here for 3 hours.
And we did ask a lot of questions the last time. We just
I know, that was
go there
almost a
now.
month ago.
Yeah.
I'll remember them later and you can just come back.
Any other questions for Captain Hartzell or Chief? Thank you, Chief.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll open up public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this item?
Ron Sanders, I live here in Nixa, and I just had one question, and this would be for Chief Campbell and the school resource officers. Is there, and I asked them this earlier, is there a duty to protect anywhere in the oath or anywhere in their contract that would supersede the federal, the SCOTUS ruling that police officers do not have a duty to protect an individual citizen. And I just don't know whether we do have that or not.
Chief, do you know the answer to that?
Well, so I'm not real sure what your question is. If your question is about, do we have a duty to protect everyone, whether it's regardless of jurisdictional boundaries?
No, a duty to protect, to actually act to stop violence from happening.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the oath that we take, is that we would, that we would use the priorities of life, which that's how we prioritize our responses. So the short answer is absolutely we have a duty to protect people.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. We'll leave open public hearing. And we'll close the public hearing. Any further discussion? I'll accept a motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Amy Hookstrat,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orr.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming out and waiting all this time for us to not ask you any questions at all. I think this is I think it's going to be great for both the schools and for the city. Get us more acclimated into the schools again, and get us closer to the kids and closer to what's going on. I think we'll be happy to support you guys in whatever way we can. All right, move on to the resolutions.
Resolution number 2022-081, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa amending the city's personnel handbook by adding thereto policy 6.19, which relates to remote work by city employees.
Good evening. So this policy is something we would like to add to our handbook regarding remote work. It would not be one of those things that happens all the time, but in inclement weather or if an employee is on extended leave, it would help them to not use up all of their leave and vacation time. They could work from home.
Any questions?
How many of our employees don't have the ability to take, a laptop or?
It would probably be about 50%, if not 55.
55% do or don't?
Would not be able to.
Would not be able to.
Yeah, it's not something that every employee would have access to, unfortunately.
Makes sense.
But we do, because of COVID, we do have more capability than we did at one time, because a lot of our employees, like the police department, building inspectors, not everyone at Public Works, but a lot of office staff do have the ability to have that. And like I said, it's not something that would just be happening from, Monday through Friday. It's not like a telecommuting, or I don't want to say telecommuting, but something that is a work from home type thing. It's just for, in those times, if Jimmy were to say, hey, yeah, we're getting 10 inches of snow, if you can work from home, work from home. That way we can still get city business done and we don't just shut down. I mean, it is something that we would have to pay attention to, the forecast and things like that, to be prepared to take our stuff home, because it really does no good if you come in and pick up your stuff and then take it home. So it's something you have to pay attention to. So, but I think it would be good to offer that also in this day and age. It would be something that we could post as far as job opening, for job openings and things like that we do offer that.
You might check with IT, because I would think the way that the infrastructure is set up here from a technology standpoint, you should be able to, I would think Jimmy could sit down at Cindy's computer and log in with his credentials and still access all of his info. So if there was maybe some spare machines, if someone planned ahead that doesn't currently have a laptop, that way this isn't just for 45% of the staff.
I agree. The only thing with that right now, we have is it not Duolingo, but we have to log in. We have to have this app on our phone or something,
Yep.
what we're going to use. So we have that.
We actually have to use the same thing.
So, okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Good, because I am not IT.
So you can actually just log in from your home computer as well.
Yeah.
Well, I don't. I can't get internet at my house, so I have to use a hotspot or whatever, so I have to.
Well, you can just come to work.
You can come to work.
Hey, I have been here every time. Every snow day, 10 inches of snow.
I know.
This girl is here except for once, and that's because I got my dad message, but I am here. That's just so, I take it as a challenge sometimes, I'm just saying that. But for everybody else, it would be good for them to work from home.
I knew I would regret saying that.
Uh-huh, that's what happens.
Yep.
Questions?
Any other
And
questions?
as Amanda talked about, just, this is for specific situations that
Yeah.
would warrant the ability to work from home, necessity to work from home. This would not be for individuals that are sick, for example. That's what sick time's for. This would be for those individuals that can work from home, that may be quarantined because of a family member that's sick. We would rather utilize their skills and continue to perform, get that work.
All right. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much, ma'am. We'll open up public hearing. Close public hearing. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yep.
Resolution number 2022-082, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa amending the Police Department's Law Enforcement Policy Manual by modifying Policy 1014, which relates to compensation and overtime.
Mayor, Council, I'm back again for another policy amendment. Unfortunately, I had to bring this to you guys because we had some recommended language from Department of Transportation on how to craft our policy for double overtime to encourage officers to engage in certain grant overtime work for traffic enforcement. We used their recommended language, and then they came back and said, well, actually, we'd like it to be something else. And so we redrafted it with the new language so that it was, I guess, a little more crafted so that it would meet their guidelines and their standards. And so essentially the only change is a minor amount of wording and that how we're going to do that and pay for how it's going to be crafted and paid for so that it addresses DOT grants, not specific wording to specific grants, but more general is how I would describe it. So again, nothing changing in the overtime pay compensation portion other than that section in your packet. You'll see we made sure that it was highlighted. Do you have any particular questions about that?
Any questions? Thank you, Chief.
And I will tell you that if they come back and have us change it again, I'll be back in front of you, unfortunately, to do that. We're trying to be compliant so that we can get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And we'll open up public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I will.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Resolution number 2022-083, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Smith & Edwards Construction Incorporated for the construction of a graded walkway at the wastewater treatment facility.
Mayor and Council, passage of this resolution awards a bid and authorizes the administrator to execute a contract, as Becca said, with Smith & Edwards Incorporated to install a graded walkway at the wastewater treatment plant. As part of our daily operations, facility operators, they need to walk out and check some in the aeration ditches and be able to clean out some debris. Well, they're walking out there on a narrow concrete wall, basically, that encompasses the ditch. It does have some handrails, but they're really not safety rails, so to speak, to keep some, as a good protection for the employees. Also, the narrow walkway makes it hard for them to be able to, with that debris, utilize a wheelbarrow, those types of things, to be able to move that material out of there. So staff worked with our engineer to put together specific design criteria for installing a graded metal walkway adjacent to the concrete, and it also will have a safer employee-type rail to provide an added level of security for the employees. We received 2 bids when we bid this out. Smith & Edwards, of course, is the lowest qualified bidder, as we've already mentioned. This is a $100,000 CIP in the 2022 budget. However, the bid came in at $53,138. Part of the reason the budget request was a little higher than that because we have engineering and some of those other costs, which we have spent some money on engineering. We'll still spend a little more. So overall, we'll probably be finalized in the $70,000 range. So we're well under budget on the project. But the portion for Smith & Edwards and this contract is $53,138. And the contract is a 45-day contract from the word go from us. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have. I recommend passage.
Any questions?
I just want to say that when I toured the wastewater treatment facility, I saw this firsthand, and this is definitely a major need.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Doug.
Yep.
And we'll open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution number 2022-084, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa consenting to the mayor's appointment of Kevin Alberry to the Charter Review Commission. This one is me. In July, we were made aware that Commissioner Kendall Dingus had moved. In his moving, he moved out of District 1 into District 2. Per the charter, there can only be 3 commissioners from each district. With Kendall moving, that placed 4 commissioners from District 2. So he is actually no longer qualified to serve on the commission. District 1 was made aware. They have posed their suggestions to the mayor. The mayor has selected Kevin Alberry. He has shown interest in serving, and staff would recommend approval.
Any questions? I spoke with Mr. Alberry, and also Mark Hartsock, the chairman of the committee, also spoke with him, and so I think we'll be in good shape there. All right, open the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to this.
Mayor Council, Kevin Alberry, Nixa resident. I just wanted to show up and meet you all formally. And if you approve me, I'm excited to work with the commission to make our city better. And I guess if you have any questions for me, I can answer those, but.
Well, it's nice to finally see you in person.
I know.
Yeah.
I enjoy your emails.
Yeah, I do too.
About 30 billion now, I think. Yeah.
I love them. They're great.
Well, good. I'm happy you enjoy them. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll leave open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve.
So made. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Kevin, if you don't mind hanging out another few minutes, I'm gonna get your contact information. I'll send you about the next meeting, okay? Resolution number 2022-085, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Better Block SGF for placemaking demonstrations in downtown Nixa.
Back in 2020, the strategic plan, a strategic priority was identified that would revitalize neighborhoods and business district. And it generated an action plan. The city of Nixa shall make investments each year toward downtown district for revitalization. Because of this action plan, funds were budgeted for a downtown master plan. But after much internal discussion, it was decided that before we completed a downtown master plan, it would be productive to find out what improvements downtown would make the biggest impact. Mr. Godby was familiar with Better Block, and staff contacted Better Block, which is a nonprofit organization, and they specialize in providing placemaking demonstrations. And the way they do that is they do temporary improvements in an area. And then what they do is they go back and get feedback to determine that they can gauge which best case scenario improvements work best for the public and the business owners themselves. Then temporary improvements include like landscaping, sidewalk extensions. These are temporary. They form them with plywood and stuff. Street paint, cafe tables and chairs, and cafe lighting and stuff like that. Downtown revitalization was involved in the discussions with Better Block and the city. They were at the table, so they knew exactly what the plans were going to be. And the Better Block, and with the collaboration between the city, Better Block, and the downtown group, came up with a plan to provide 2 different schemes for the downtown group by Better Block. The first scheme would transform South Main to one-way traffic down to Elm with angled parking on the west side, and it extends the sidewalks to allow for better pedestrian traffic. They paint the crosswalks, they have landscaping, they have art and/or murals, and they were going to take, there's a little divot on the east side where trash cans were at one time. They want to make that either like a pocket park or a beer garden, and have cafe tables and stuff like that with the little lighting and stuff. And then they were going to have outdoor seating and stuff for the restaurants. The second scenario, it keeps two-way traffic, but it still includes the extended sidewalks, the landscaping, the painted crosswalks, and all that. Once these projects are completed, Better Block will survey not only the customers, but the business owners to find out which of the schemes worked best for them, and then they can come back and give us a better idea of what permanent improvements we could make down there. The resolution tonight authorizes the city administrator to execute a contract with Better Block in the amount of $11,400. The funds for this project will come out of downtown master plan line item. And there's Exhibit C that spells out all the materials and services that Better Block will provide for this project. Any questions on this?
I have a question.
Sure.
I know I've heard the idea floated of closing that section of Main to traffic entirely. So is there a reason that has that idea been sort of dismissed at this point?
Right now, that is not on the table
Okay.
because the other streets around it aren't built to handle the extra traffic.
Okay.
Correct. Okay. Did right.
Do what?
Anything else?
Any other
That's what I
questions?
think. Who's next?
We're actually currently doing that now. It's completely closed down. You
Well,
can
yeah.
walk anywhere you want to.
Yeah, we did do that.
Yeah.
So being a part of the downtown revitalization meetings, when we've discussed this, this Better Block community did some projects in Springfield when they were trying to decide what they were gonna do with their downtown areas and some of the different roads and ways down there. And
Right.
it really helped them, give them guidance on how to handle that. And the idea that the downtown committee is wanting to do is basically have one of these ready to go in place when the road opens back up. So it's not changing 3 times, now it's just changing
Right.
twice.
Yeah, our time frame did change because of MoDOT,
Yep,
but
so.
they'll put up the one scheme, I think, for about 45 days, and they'll tear it all down and then put up the next plan for another 45 days, approximately. And they specialize in this, Better Block, and it's a voluntary program, nonprofit organization. Most of them are volunteers. They come in and set everything up, tear it all down.
So I assume the one-way scenario will be clearly marked because
Yes.
traffic is currently 2-lane
It will
both
be.
directions.
Yeah.
And then temporarily one-way and then go back to
Yeah, it'll go back to two-way.
2-lane.
Yep.
See how much we can confuse people.
Yep.
With all the new stoplights and everything else too.
Yeah.
And they'll have bump outs for the sidewalks to make it to where it's not as cohesive for two-way traffic. Anything else?
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll open up the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
Well, coincidentally, this is one of the emails that Ms. Hookstrat and I had with Mr. Alberry, so here's your update, by the way. So I said I was going to respond to you, but you're here, so.
Anything else? Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, anything else from staff? What do you got? Boss lady.
This Saturday, Lead Nixa is hosting our very first ever multicultural event.
You got taco trucks?
At Macaulay Park. What did you say?
So you got taco trucks?
We're gonna have taco
You
truck.
got taco trucks, I know.
We're gonna have a taco truck, we're gonna have an ice cream truck. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. And we have Grupo Latinoamericano, which is a dance group. They have about 30 dancers. They have women, young women, and then little children. And they could do dances from all Spanish-speaking countries in the world. And so they're gonna perform from 6 to 7. And they're supposed to be fantastic. And then after them, we have the Celtic Fire Irish Dance Troupe in Cloggers coming, and they're going to perform after them. So we have free entertainment for everybody, and but they're supposed to be phenomenal. It is a free event. I can't talk this late. We do have vendors, we have food trucks, and we're going to have giveaways for the kids. So I'd like it if you guys would show up.
Very good.
And if you know anybody that wants to participate, let them come my way. Oh, and I did get a hold of the Spanish club and the Spanish Honor Society, and they're going to participate in this too. They're going to have displays, and I think they're going to have little games for the kids and maybe some coloring. So that's exciting. And after that,
But wait,
But wait, there's
it's
more.
movies in the park,
Yeah.
because we're doing it in conjunction with him. And it'll be the showing of Encanto. And I think there's a special guest supposed to arrive for the movie. Maribel will be there. So a fun time to be had by all. And we do have a taco truck coming.
be Joe.
It's nacho ordinary taco truck.
Nacho.
That's nice.
Isn't that clever?
With that, is the movie going to be closed captioned? Okay.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I think they probably always should be. Yeah.
Anything else from staff? Anything else from council?
I have something. It's rare that I can, I think, upset all of staff with what I'm about to say, but I'm just going to read something I submitted on Tuesday to Becca. So I would first like to thank all my constituents for the amazing opportunity to serve over the past 6 years and 5 months. I'd like to thank staff for being some of the greatest people I have ever known. And I would like to thank all members of council for working with me to accomplish amazing things for the city of Nixa. Throughout my time in office, the city has faced unique challenges, yet through perseverance and commitment to service, we were able to bring strong wins to the people of Nixa. When I first got elected in 2016 at the age of 20, becoming the youngest person ever to serve our great city, I campaigned on making our parks more accessible to those with disabilities. This year, we will be opening our inclusive playground. I campaigned on lowering utility rates in the city, and we were able to do that as well. We diversified our electric grid and ensured that we were in a strong financial position so that when prices surged during the Texas freeze, council chose to use city funds to cover those cost increases instead of pushing them onto the people of Nixa. I campaigned on more sidewalks within the city, and for the first time in our history, we have a sidewalk that connects the Nixa Community Center to the Nixa High School. I focused on supporting our police, where we pushed to increase officer pay and provide our officers with the resources they needed to do their jobs effectively, which is why we have consistently been one of the safest cities in Missouri. I love this community, and I love serving this community. However, from 2016 to now, my life has seen a blessing of growth and opportunity. I started my position on council being 2 years into college, and into a college degree. I've now graduated with 2 bachelor's degrees and have plans to start a master's program soon. I went from being a part-time Nixa Walmart sales associate to being a full-time engineer and intern, where I'm on track to getting my professional license next year. I've also had the blessing of watching my extended family grow with the birth of my nephew, who just turned 5 this year, and my niece, who is turning 2. I enjoy being their uncle, and I love spending time with them. So with all of that, I feel as though I'm at a critical point in my life. I have incredible opportunities ahead of me that if I pursue them, I won't be able to dedicate my full attention to the city or to the people of Nixa like they deserve to have. So it's with deep consideration that I submitted my letter of resignation effective August 31st on August 9th. I look forward to continuing to serve the city in a private capacity, and I hope to continue to bring great wins to our community. This is not a goodbye to the people of Nixa, but it's a moment to take hold of opportunities that will allow me to better serve the public in the future. Thank you all.
All right. On that sad note, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.